It's time for Twig. This week in Google, Stacey, Jeff, and Ant are all here. We will debate whether Facebook is a monopoly or not. The judge says, you got to prove it. We talk about, can you? Can you even prove it? Amazon wants the chairman of the FCC to recuse herself because she doesn't like us. And we'll talk about why you don't have to worry about those 700 million leaked LinkedIn records. It's all coming up next on Twig.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Twig. This week in Google, episode 618, recorded Wednesday, June 30th, 2021. Looks like I'm walking. This week in Google is brought to you by Untuck It. Summer is right around the corner, and now's the perfect time to try out an Untuck It shirt that's just right for you. Use code TWIT for 20% off your first purchase at untuckit.com. And by AT&T Active Armor. We rely so much on our phones these days and are always on them. Whether it's live streaming content, catching up with family on weekly video calls, or watching your favorite podcast, there's no room for fraud calls. Thankfully, AT&T makes customer security a priority, helping block those pesky calls. It's not complicated. AT&T Active Armor, 24/7 proactive network security and fraud call blocking to help stop threats at no extra charge. Compatible device and service required. Visit att.com/activearmor for details. It's time for Twig. This week in Google, the show where we cover the latest news from the Googleverse, which includes everything because Google indexes everything. Stacey Higginbotham is here from StaceyOnIoT.com. Her newsletters are fantastic. Her events, amazing. And don't forget her podcast with Kevin Toffel, the IoT podcast. Hello, Stacey. What's it? Is it 100 degrees where you are? What is the...
No, we're now back to 72. We're back to our normal temperatures.
Okay.
What was the highest it got to, Stacey?
I think it was 108.
120 in southern Canada. It was
Lytton, British Columbia got to almost 50 Celsius.
Record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrifying. Terrifying. And you're not, you're used to it because you're from Austin. This was nothing for you, right?
Right. But, oh, man, y'all, it was horrible for my plants.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel natural up here.
No.
I mean, like,
No.
even the sky changes color. It's...
Yeah. I call it earthquake weather down here. That's Jeff Jarvis. Hello, Jeff Jarvis. You know who he is, the Leonardtown professor for journalistic innovation and at the Craig Newmark. Craig Newmark. Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of Andy Murray. Hello there, Jeff Jarvis.
Andy won it.
Andy won it. Nope, spoiler alert. Some people are recording Wimbledon. Do you say Wimbledon or Wimbledon?
Wimbledon.
You say it so quickly that no one knows.
Well, that's how I do everything, yes.
No, we can tell. Wimbledon. Now, I've heard people say it with a T sound, but that's wrong.
No, it's wrong. That's wrong.
That's what I thought.
I got corrected by Alan Rusberger on how I say Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. Were you saying Edinburgh?
I was saying Edinburgh. No.
It's Edinburgh. And it's Louisville. And it's Aunt Pruitt. Host of Hands On Photography.
Who's going to go to
Nolans. He's a Clemson fan from South Kakalaki. Hello, Aunt.
Hello, Mr. Laporte. How you be, sir?
Boy, there were so many big stories this week. It's kind of hard to know where to start, but I think probably the district court judge who threw out the FTC lawsuit against Facebook along with 48 state attorneys general saying, wait a minute, guys, you didn't prove that Facebook is a monopoly. Now, I have to point out the judge was a little salty. He said, you act as if everyone accepts that Facebook is a monopoly, but you have, in fact, not given me any evidence.
But that's so true about how the discussion is going these days. Well, of course, we're in filter bubbles. Of course, it's monopoly. Of course, this. And in a suit, you gotta come up with the evidence. You gotta prove it. They didn't do it.
The well, good or bad news, depending on if you're Mark Zuckerberg or not, is that there are 30 days to refile, and the FTC could very likely, and many experts say, within 30 days, provide that evidence to the judge. So the judge didn't really throw out the case. He just said, look, you got to give me something. Help me out here. Give me something to work with. What
basically say, get your act together.
What, Ben Thompson said, of course it's not a monopoly. What would you say? I guess you probably agree with Ben Thompson, Jeff.
Yes, because I put that in the rundown and you didn't. We've already gone over this before the show. So yeah, I agree with Ben and you don't. And I aired Ben's opinion and you generously are now airing his opinion as well.
Actually, you said, I'm sorry, not Ben Thompson, it's Benedict Evans.
Well, also both. Actually, no, Ant put in Ben Evans.
Oh, okay.
Right. I put in Ben Evans.
And Ben Thompson. Oh, I didn't erase them both, I guess. So
for those who dare disagree.
So the monopoly would be in personal social networks, PSNs.
But what is that?
Well, and I think it would be, monopoly would mean that they had a dominant position. And I think you could say, well, what about Twitter and all, and Discord?
What about
and
every newspaper?
forums?
What about us?
Yeah.
What about what we're doing right now?
Well, we're not a social network in that.
Oh, you are. Well,
what is a actually? What is a social?
What
is a social network? Actually, what is a social network?
That's the thing. You got to define it if you're going to try to argue a monopoly in it.
What the takeaway for a lot of people was, oh, that's right, because our antitrust laws are out of date. They were written in the 30s. And they need to be rewritten. In fact, one member of Congress said this is exactly why we have 6 antitrust bills in front of us.
Well, let's get into that, how bad those are. But no, I think that they shouldn't be rewritten for the time. You should go for the principle. But the question is, our antitrust, as opposed to Europe, is based on consumer harm. Now, if you want to change the nature of antitrust, then you do it for everybody, every company, every industry. And that's okay. You can do that. But it shouldn't, we shouldn't be directing this at one set of companies. We should be talking about what we expect for fair competition and consumer benefit.
I think, let me pose this question to you all, not just you, Jeff, but to all of you. The thing that I think Congress and the FTC are concerned about is the idea that Facebook, when it saw a competitor coming along, would just acquire it. So that's what they did with Instagram. That's what they did with WhatsApp. It's what they tried to do with Snapchat. And since it's failing that with Snapchat, they essentially duplicated the features of Snapchat and Instagram and thereby took away enough market share that Snapchat was no longer a threat. So how about that? I mean, that's not currently, that's one of the laws, by the way, would specifically address that. I gather that the Sherman Antitrust Act has no
What's the
notion of that idea?
What Thompson says is that when Instagram was bought, it was mocked because, oh, this is too small. What are you doing? And now it's big. And would it have been big on its own without Facebook? Or did Facebook make it big? These are proving negatives you can't really do. Yeah.
Additionally, the FTC approved the merger. So it's not like they weren't given the chance to stop it in progress. And in fact, that kind of underscores your first argument, because the reason they approved it is, well, hell, you just bought a little app with 27 people. Who cares?
It could be an acquirer. Yeah.
But what about that, Stacey? Should companies be prohibited from acquiring competitors to stifle competition?
Explicitly to stifle competition?
Well, they're not going to say, Mark didn't step up and say, we got to buy Instagram. They're going to kill us. Although, actually, I shouldn't say that. There are smoking emails. So maybe that would be something that the FTC didn't know about. And maybe that, right. So, whether they say so or not, if it's
this is
visibly the case.
This is where I do think we need some updates, if not at the legal level, at the regulatory level. So, and part of this is why I hate social networks. I don't think about them because I don't know enough about them. I don't like them. I don't have a theory about them like I do about harder technology. But for example, when the FTC is evaluating like telecom mergers, they have a set of standards that defines the monopoly. It's the Heifman something index. I can never remember. Anyway, they've got math. They could do that. I I don't know if they could establish those equations, and in doing so, we would have a debate over how good those equations are and what we should measure and all of that. That would be one way to come about this, and then be able to prove. That's basically what I think the judge is asking them to do, which is to define what whatever social network
What's
is.
The market.
Yeah. What is your market? Where, and then, I do think we should think about the potential for consumer harms, even though that's hard when you're buying an app. I don't think we have. So we should be defining the market, but then we should also be taking a very hard look at what network effects can enable with regards to stifling competition. And that's probably a separate process, or should be, and it should be individual of the big companies, and should look at the entire market and what kind of advantages that has and brings. And we should figure out redresses to that harm that
if there's harm
could be applied horizontally. There's definitely harm associated with network effects.
But there's also benefit. I mean, Leo, to go back to your question.
Yeah, well, and there's
a lot of companies.
But that's the point. We've got to discuss what harms are okay. What are the trade-offs? Because we can't just say, well, this could be good or it could be bad. I mean, that's kind of like saying technology is a tool and it's neutral. Yeah, it is. But we as a society then have to come in and actually do something. Like the government actually has to govern that. So that's what we need to be talking about.
But on the other hand, make sure we have the people that are governing this be up to snuff on all of this technology, or be educated on it. Don't have someone that knows nothing about social media platforms trying to regulate it, because it makes no sense. They're not going to understand a lot of the nuance in it.
Leo, I want to go back to your question too, which is, because there's talk about this. We just forbid them from doing any M&A. Well, what that puts a chill on.
Yeah, that's, by the way, that's the law proposed, which is they shouldn't be allowed to acquire anybody.
Which is
going a little
ridiculous.
far. Yeah.
So look at, let's say.
But I think that's in response to the fact that it's hard. It's so hard to demonstrate that they're doing it for any competitive reasons, right?
Well, but let's also look at the benefit to the acquired company. Look at like Tony Hale with Scroll and Twitter, right? So he was struggling along to make it a go. He's really smart. It was okay. But being part of Twitter, the network effects now, let him build the alternative business model that he couldn't build independently as much as he can now. And so it benefited the acquired as much as the acquirer, and the market in turn, potentially. Tony's a very smart guy. I believe he's going to do a good job of it, right? So if you then took away that market, then the VCs are going to say, well, I'm not going to invest in a lot of startups because there's no exit now. If they've taken away the major exit we have, SPACs are going to go away like cotton candy. IPOs are nowhere. So you see a drying up of investment in innovation and entrepreneurship. There's an unintended consequence that comes from this. M&A is bad because Facebook did it.
And definitions are part of the difficulty here. And so the law that is proposed, which is absurd, is no M&A because we can't decide if you're a monopoly. We can't decide what your market is, and we have no idea if this acquisition. It's crazy because that's why we have the FTC, and presumably that's one of the things the FTC and other regulatory bodies that have to approve these mergers consider. That's their job.
Yeah. And the digital era has basically flattened all distribution and some of the production capabilities of a variety of industries, right? So everything from newspapers to book publishing. Okay, that's all information-based, actually. But what happens is, where'd my point go?
Your point is well taken. The FTC is looking at Instagram.
Got it anyway. It's okay.
I did get it. Because this is flattened. Normally you would say, well, they can't acquire that company because it's so big.
Yeah.
But Instagram, a 37-person application company that looks like nothing, could in fact, and I think Mark Zuckerberg correctly reasoned, be a huge threat to this multi-billion-dollar operation. That's your point, and I agree with you. That's what's different nowadays. And it's easy to enter into these new markets, and then again, thanks to network effects, you can start controlling them. Facebook knows that because they killed MySpace before they were very big. In fact,
yeah, well, and you can even see it in things like, I mean, we saw it back when Comcast bought NBC. This was a big deal because, again, the delivery of content is now flat and easy, and who owns what, matters. So, and I would argue that if you look at something like, AT&T buying Time Warner, HBO. Well, yeah, that didn't go so well. But when they did that, did you look at AT&T from the position of, well, they've got a physical pipe into X million homes that is, not really geographically competitive, but it's competitive with cable in certain areas? I mean, or do you look at it like AT&T is going to own all of this content and do some self-dealing with their streaming deals? I mean, the types of questions that the regulators have to ask are getting so much more complex, and you have to be so much more forward-looking, and you might even still get it wrong. They may bet on, I don't know, self-dealing with the content when, in fact, their real advantage was, zero rating on bandwidth. We just don't know.
It also goes, Stacey, to your examples, it also goes to the competence of the acquirer. Right. What Comcast in the hands of Comcast, a very smart company, these acquisitions had more impact on the market. In the hands of Verizon and AT&T, not so much because they're idiots.
But the fact is, they bought it to keep them from being a competition. Whether they made a success of it or made a failure of it, the main goal happened, which is these companies never became a competitor to Facebook. Ben Thompson pointed out in December, and he was quite right, that the FTC pleading was really had twisted in order to prove a monopoly. For instance, they said, well, LinkedIn is not a social network. Strava, the exercise network, is not a social network. They really, I think, improperly narrowed the definition of social network, and all to the point of saying, well, look, see, Facebook does have 100% of this market of which it's the only player. Yes.
And this is Ben Evans' argument about Amazon as well. What's the market? Yeah. Is it bookstores? And is it all of retail? So, if it's all of retail, then it's not really a monopoly
I'll stipulate that.
Nope.
But that goes back to my original question was, isn't there some interest, though, in society? I'm not going to say government because people say, oh, government has no interest in regulating anything. So let's say society in the form of our government, but we won't have to mention that. Society has some interest in keeping these companies from doing things like acquiring little companies in order to put them out of business. What about looking at it as
a data monopoly? So think about the amount of information you know about consumers, about the people you work with, about the companies that host on your
platform.
Google
knows all that. Google knows as much as Facebook.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to figure out how we can define.
Right. I think it's hard.
What's a meaningful way to measure a market that is,
but as you would say, Stacey,
on the internet.
This is the discussion to have, rather than what Congress has done is they leapt in and created 8 really dumb laws, and the FTC created a really bad suit.
By the way, is it 5? Is it 6? Is it 8? It seems to be going up over time. It was 5.
They're compromising,
I think it's 6 now, and then there's reconciliation. There's probably one in the Senate, one in the House, and oh my God, it's a mess. All of this, though, is with, I'm going to give them credit, maybe that they don't deserve, the honorable intent of trying to solve this. It's not easy.
No, it's a lot.
They're trying. Okay, they're legitimately trying to have these conversations. Also, the discussions we see about these bills and the conversations that are actually happening about them, so the public-facing discussions are very different. So that's something that, like, when you start covering Washington, you have to be aware of. And, what we end up with, I have no idea. And it will probably be half crap, half good, because that's how compromise works.
Meanwhile, Amazon is actually petitioning the FTC
this is ridiculous.
To have its new chair, Lena Khan, recuse herself because when she was a professor, she wrote she was
constantly criticizing Amazon.
It wasn't just that.
Well, she wasn't constant. She was actually thinking about what we're trying to ask people to talk about. She was actually trying to figure out how to think about monopolies for network effects and the types of companies that were emerging on the internet. And yeah, she's criticizing Amazon because she's building her definition of this, and in her definition, they were a problem.
You can't blame Amazon for trying, can you?
Oh, no, I can't blame them for trying. I'm like, of course they're going to try this. And if their lawyers didn't, you'd be like, what are you paying your lobbyists for?
Amazon writes, Chair Khan has made numerous and highly detailed public pronouncements regarding Amazon, including on market definitions, specific conduct, theories of harm, and the purpose, effects, and legality of such contact. Indeed, she has on numerous occasions argued that Amazon is guilty of antitrust violations and should be broken up. These statements convey to any reasonable observer the clear impression that she has already made up her mind about many material facts relevant to Amazon's antitrust culpability. She's publicly affirmed these conclusions not only as a legal scholar, but as an advocate for an antitrust advocacy group, and then as a lead author of a major congressional report. You know, they do have a point there. She has made up her mind.
If she were a judge, she would have to recuse herself. Now, she's not a judge. She's an advocate. If she had talked about this at a level of principle and example, but she did attack Amazon. And you're right, Stacey, because she thinks it's an example of what shouldn't be, but it puts her in a position where, eyes on you now.
So how does...
Yeah, but this is how she got the job. So if
that's why she got the job. But does the FTC chairman, she sets the agenda, but ultimately all she can do is sue and you go to court, right?
Yeah, right.
So she should be an advocate for the position by default
of the laws, whatever the laws are.
And this is where I get frustrated. She is taking a pro-consumer view.
Wouldn't you want the FTC chairman to do that? Yes.
Well, that's my argument.
I'm going to argue it's not a pro-consumer view. It's an anti-consumer view. Okay. Because what Amazon has done is reduce prices like crazy. And other companies don't like that, but it's created a wonderfully competitive world where I can buy books now a lot cheaper. Now, authors aren't crazy about that. Publishing houses aren't crazy about that, but it's really great for consumers. More choice than ever, lower prices than ever. How is that not pro-consumer?
So consumers are getting hurt by false reviews. They're getting Amazon is pressuring. Consumers are also producers. You could say consumers are getting hurt because people who buy things also end up working for Amazon. You could say the companies that work with Amazon also employ people.
There's also price dumping, and there is a predatory behavior where companies reduce prices, making consumers happy, but with the long-term.
Did you see the Wall Street Journal story?
No, what'd they say?
Today in the Wall Street Journal, they reported out a story. What?
The warrants?
No, this is yes, the stock warrants. Yes.
Oh boy.
Amazon basically saying that if you do business for certain companies, they're like, hey, if we're going to take shares in your company as part of our deal, signing a deal with you.
So, Stacey, this is a really good example, I think, because back in the day of startups, every landlord in San Francisco and Silicon Valley would demand warrants of the startup there. They wouldn't just demand the rent; they would also demand warrants. And
but
I was on the board.
Not every.
Wait! I'm about. Let me just. I'm about to agree with you. So give me a sec. So that's a landlord who was in a position of some power. Right. Amazon is in a position of much greater power to demand the same thing. And is that a misuse of power is an excellent discussion to have. See, we agreed on that.
Okay. I was like, yes, it is important things to talk about. So
yeah, it is. That's a good example of something to talk about. I think about whether or not here's an activity of the company. Is it a misuse of their power in the position that they have because they're so big? I'm all for that.
So let me ask.
I think that's right.
So let me ask for this, because this gets into this is like a giant issue associated with writing legislation, period, which is, do you address the individual harms or do you try to establish a rule that works across a wider either pattern of behavior or...
Always the latter.
See, I don't think we can afford to do that because the government moves 3 to 5 years or even 12 years in the case of antitrust lawsuits. So that I think that's where we're running into the internet economy and the regulatory, the pace of regulation. And you can't have 10 years of harms.
The principles we just discussed, what we just discussed, those are eternal principles. Those are in the laws now. That's the definitions of misuse of power are there. You could prosecute that now. You don't need a new law for that. The principles are there. So no, I think you've got to start there. And if there are things that you think Amazon or Facebook or Google are doing wrong, I've long said on the show where Google is vulnerable and the government's only now waking up to it. Sorry about that. Is darn telephone monopoly. It's just
hey,
AT&T
is a sponsor,
anyway.
So yes, it's too bad you don't have AT&T because you wouldn't be getting junk calls.
I wouldn't be getting that.
We'll talk about that in a moment.
Yes,
well played.
It was a joke. AT&T. It was a joke. I'm an AT&T customer, just to be clear here.
Well, that wasn't your cell phone either, so
no, it wasn't. Anyway, the principles are there, and I think that what I was going to say was Google has been vulnerable for years on its advertising behavior. It's not about search monopoly. That's laughable. That's ridiculous. But
it ties in, doesn't it? I mean,
it's part of it.
The monopoly they have in search gives them a leg up in advertising.
But so does it. So plenty of other monopolies and plenty of other oligopolies in advertising too. The issue there is, search is not the issue because Google's so much more than a search company now. It also uses advertising in mobile and all these other ways. The advertising behavior and the concentration of its power there is where it's more vulnerable, and they're only kind of now waking up to that. And they didn't need new laws to deal with that. They could have dealt with that 10 years ago.
I do agree with Stacey though that because the world has changed, technology has changed so many things. Especially, I like your analogy of the flat economic hierarchy. I don't know if the Sherman Antitrust Act, written in 1933, can really encompass that. I don't think it's wrong for Congress to try to not completely replace it wholesale, but to try to kind of to polish it up and make it more applicable. You think that the law, the Sherman Antitrust Act, is sufficient?
Generally, yes, but I think where I'm disagreeing here is that if you're going to attack a change, fine, but attack it at a universal level so that it pertains to banking and it pertains to retail and it pertains to other industries. To say we're going to create a law just to go after one company is not how we do things in this country. The same way we wouldn't create a law to go after just one person. And so
you think these laws are targeting tech?
Two companies.
Not even tech, companies. Just two companies.
Two companies, yeah. And that's, look at Australia in that case. In fact, I had this discussion. I had this exact discussion with the people who wrote Malinowski's 230 law. Right. I talked to the legislative aides and I talked to Malinowski about this, who's my representative. And they wrote it in such a way, I said, well, watch out, guys. The way you wrote this, trying to come up with a definition that would only include those two, you actually ended up including newspapers. And they're not going to be, because you basically said anybody who uses algorithms to rank things, and is of a certain size. I said, well, the size you picked is the size of the newspaper company headquartered in your state. You might want to rethink that, guys. Right? So they tried
kind of like the Florida law that goes after social networks that don't own amusement parks.
That was just hilarious.
Yeah,
classic.
That was pretty blatant.
I put up, there was a great, I don't know if you saw, there were two people. Mike Masnick did a brief thread on that. There was a much larger one from Eric Cohn that was just brilliant, covering the hearing, and the judge was just nonplussed with Florida. It was hilarious, and the Disney thing came up, and yeah.
We should point out that those bills are going through markup right now, and Zoe Lofgren and others have pointed out there are all sorts of issues, and they're trying to adjust those. So I don't think the bills as written are anything near the bills that will end up getting voted on. And then, of course, there's a Senate version and then there's reconciliation. So we're a long way off. And I think it's a good starting point. But I agree with you. It's not
we should
word.
be talking about it.
Yeah.
And we'll see how fast it goes. I mean, the other thing is Congress should not be taking so many freaking breaks. They should actually sit down and fix this.
Well,
but that's just me.
Don't forget, they're the saucer that cools the hot tea kettle. Or something.
These days, no, they have hands up.
The Senate is the saucer that cools the cup. The boiling water is the House of Representatives, and the president is, in this analogy, Is he the tea cozy? I think he might be. So let's take a look.
Do the hokey pokey and turn yourself around.
It's an old. I think it comes from the Federalist Papers. It's an old analogy.
Okay, I'm just like sitting here.
Is this the teapot dome scandal?
Where did? Yeah, I'm like, where is this coming from?
That cools the tea. Let me see where this the history of this.
Fool me once and
George Washington told Thomas Jefferson.
You
was
get
it
mad
in
at me for
Hamilton?
going
Because
to
if it
history
wasn't
lessons,
in Hamilton,
You
I'm
get
not
mad
even
at
going
me.
It wasn't in Hamilton.
This generation's not going to get it.
You know, back old George told Tom, he said, the framers created the Senate to cool House legislation, just as a saucer was used to cool hot tea. I remember those days.
They created the Senate to make the southern states happy, but that's another story.
Yeah, well, there's a tradition that Thomas Jefferson, coming home from France,
There's your critical race theory.
called George Washington to account at the breakfast table for having agreed to a second and, as Jefferson thought, unnecessary legislative chamber. Why, asked Washington, did you just now pour that coffee into your saucer before drinking? Really? Was that a thing people did?
They used to, oh yeah. When in the original, let's see, you got me started, Leo.
Here it goes.
In the 18th century and 17th century coffee houses, that is how they bought their coffee. They poured it into a saucer and drank from the saucer.
Wow.
Makes no sense, but that's what they did.
Jefferson said, to cool it.
Aren't you glad I'm here for that?
Georgie, to cool it, Georgie.
Interesting.
My throat is not made of brass. Even so, said Washington through his solid cherry wood
My teeth are made of wood.
We pour our legislation into the senatorial saucer to cool it. And there is your bicentennial minute. Visit your local public library, kids. We're going to take a little break, come back with more Stacey, Aunt, Jeff. Lots more to talk about. But first, do you like my shirt?
Of course.
We're debating whether to keep it buttoned or unbuttoned.
No. You button that button. No.
Really?
Too much. Oh yeah.
I don't want to see the undershirt.
Well, I know.
As long as I never see your undershirt, I'm good.
I don't want you to see
gold
the undershirt.
chains next. No,
but it's funny because
it's demure. It's not a V. He's fine.
but it's on the edge.
I've had people, ex-wives, let's be honest, unbutton it, saying, no, you look so uptight when your top button is buttoned. I think wearing this beautiful Untuck It linen shirt is really pretty casual enough. We can debate whether to button the second button or not. I will aver that I have not tucked it in. Untuck It shirts are designed not to be tucked in. And that is something everybody agrees. It looks a little uptight when you tuck your shirt into your pants. Untuck It shirts are ready to help you make that transition back to the office, back to dinner with friends, back to reuniting with family, especially back to vacations. I have stocked up on Untuck It linen shirts. I love linen, especially for hot weather, because we're going to Hawaii in a couple of weeks, and I have a whole host of these beautiful Untuck It shirts. Untuck It shirts are all designed to be worn untucked, although you could tuck them in. It's not like you couldn't. You could if you really had to, but they design them. It's a tough style to get right. It's just the right length. It hits your belt line right at mid zipper, which is so it's not too long. You don't look like you're wearing a muumuu, and it's not too short. It's just right. Fits all shapes and sizes. Helps you look sharp even when you're looking casual. And there are all kinds of Untuck It shirts. In fact, I want you to visit the website untuckit.com. They've got performance shirts that wick sweat. I have those. They have short sleeve button downs. I have those. They have polos. I have those. They're all made to beat the heat. They also have office shirts, button downs, Henleys, polos, tees, all the shirts in all the shapes and sizes, including up to triple XL. We call that programmer size. They also have slim, relaxed, and tall fits. Jason Howell, who's very tall, his Untuck It fits beautifully, even though he's, 6'9"? There's always something. How about you, Ant? Do your Untuck It's fit your massive biceps? I think so. Oh, he's gone. He's gone to go get his Untuck It on. What else can I tell you? They've quality.
He did show us. He did show us.
Yeah. No, he has a bunch of them too.
Of course, everything fits beautifully on Ant.
I know. If you look like that,
he's a model after all.
Yeah. I think he just went to go do some bench presses, actually. Untuck It tests every batch of fabric. They want the best possible quality and consistency. They're really quality, absolute quality nuts. All of their button-downs, their polos, their tees, their Henleys have just the right length. They fit perfectly. They actually test the colors on the shirt. All shirts are checked 5 times to ensure they retain shape, color, strength, the highest quality standards in the industry. And I notice that, by the way. When I order online, I'll really notice if the quality isn't there. I can tell you right now, I have maybe a dozen Untuckit shirts, and they're all perfect. Every bit, just wonderful. If you're ready to go back to the office, Untuckit has you covered there as well. They have the wrinkle-free collection, which I love. I just throw them in the wash, hang them up after. I dry them about halfway, so while they're still damp, hang them up, and they look like they've just come back from the cleaners. Whether you prefer short or long sleeves, you're going to get ready to get back to work. 85 stores nationwide if you want to check it out. They offer free returns and exchanges, so there's no reason not to try them online. Actually, I'm after COVID now, I'm totally hooked on buying everything online because I'm just so used to it. If it doesn't fit, pack it up, send it back, order the next size up, next size down. It's easy. Summer is right around the corner. Actually, I think it's here officially. Now's the time to try out an Untuckit shirt that's just right for you. If this isn't summer, then the Pacific Northwest has some questions to ask. Use the code TWiT for 20% off your first purchase at untuckit.com. In fact, if you live in Seattle, you must get some of these great Untuckit beautiful linen shirts. They're just great for hot weather. Untuckit.com. The offer code TWiT gets you 20% off. I love my Untuckits. Look for, if you see somebody wearing a great shirt, look for the little, can you see that little corner tab on the bottom of the shirt? That's the Untuckit sign. That's just subtle. When you see it, you go, yeah, Untuckit. Untuckit.com. Offer code TWiT for 20% off. Thank you, Untuckit, for getting me ready for Hawaii, for getting our staff and our family and our friends all looking sharp. Untuckit. Did you know there was a ceasefire between Google and Microsoft?
I vaguely remember this, but yes.
Well, who could forget the Microsoft ads? Let me see if I can find one. There was the Gmail man, remember? Do you remember those ads? Let me see if I can find. Oh, my God, it's so awful.
I didn't know there was such a battle.
Well, I think this is...
Microsoft's been...
I think this is why the truce started when Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai became CEOs. Here you go. This is from 2011, before the truce. The following scene represents. Wait a minute. This might not be.
Did you do your sound?
Oh yeah. Hold on a second. Hold on. This is. I'm gonna get the official one. This is not official. This is somebody's. Somebody. It may be that actually Google has pulled it down because they're so embarrassed about it. Let me see if I can find the official one. Paul Thurrott, host of Windows Weekly, loved these and said Microsoft should do a lot more of these. I was, on the other hand, a little... Let's see. It's on Microsoft's... I bet you Microsoft has taken it down. Yeah, they have. All right, we're going to have to look at an unofficial version because Microsoft doesn't want you to remember the Gmail.
Learn. Up next, what Microsoft doesn't want you to know.
Yes. Oh, that's a good tease. I like that. Mm-hmm. The following scene represents the opposite experience of Office 365, says Microsoft.
He's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. He peeks at every subject in unreal time. Probing every sentence and all your punctuation. Got his nose in every colon in every situation. He's the Gmail man.
Got his nose in every colon and every situation. Watch. No, don't take it away. Zucchini,
lava,
volcano, lava.
Birthday.
That wasn't real, right? That was a mockery, right?
No.
Are you looking at our
This
mail?
is a Microsoft video.
I'm looking at everyone's mail.
How can you do that?
Oh, man.
Sometimes when a person really loves their Gmail very, very much, the two get together and
an ad is born.
You can't do that, mailman.
Of course I can.
I know, it feels like a parody, doesn't
I'm
it?
the Gmail
Oh,
man.
man. The kid's face.
Good Lord. What year was this?
Not 2011. Not so long ago.
Good morning, senders and receivers.
10 years ago.
Carolyn Johnson, get up off of that painful itching and burning of yours. Come check this. Leave there? Oh, it feels good, right?
No, what? Have you been reading my mail?
Never saw this.
No, just skimming. For certain keywords.
Shortly after this campaign, Google did in fact announce they were no longer going to go through your mail for keywords. But they were doing this at the time.
But they were also very transparent about it.
Right. And in fact, I pointed out when Paul was crowing about these.
No, actually, I wouldn't, because I was actually writing.
I pointed out that. Well, let me ask you something, Paul. Does Outlook eliminate spam? He said, yeah. I said, well, how do you think they do that?
Yeah,
by reading your mail. The only difference is Google was using it for ad keywords.
Yeah, that was the added.
Isn't that kind of wrong?
But it's not that Microsoft or anybody else doesn't read your mail. It's machines.
That's the debate we should be having. We should be building laws about the situations we want to use this stuff in. Right. So, like,
how it's used.
Is it okay to use facial recognition for tracking?
Well, this is an example of why laws should be written to principle, not technology.
Right.
You have a right to privacy only in your first class delivered physical mail, not in your communications when it gets to government here, right? Because they wrote it to that specific technology of the mail, not anticipating other messaging mechanisms.
Well, in the mail is a government service. That was the other thing that was worth noting when we started.
Yeah, when there were
writing
federal laws against reading your mail, even if it was a postcard, right?
Which is why, and there's
no.
There are still
Postcards
federal
were exempt.
laws around that.
Oh, you could read. They could read your postcard. They have to because the addresses
they
on
had
it.
to.
Yeah. But if it's in an envelope, they can't look in the envelope, right? That's illegal.
Without a warrant.
Without a warrant.
Right.
So apparently for the last 5 years, ever since Satya Nadella became CEO and Sundar Pichai became CEO, there was a non-aggression pact, a truce between Microsoft and Google in which they agreed not to aim their substantial lobbying firepower against each other. This is according
Microsoft never paid attention to that at all.
This is according to Bloomberg. That truce, that old non-aggression pact, if you like Soviet era language, forged at the time by two new CEOs wanting a fresh start on a formerly acrimonious relationship, had already been fraying before it lapsed in April.
Isn't this antitrust?
Well, you can't agree not to poach each other's employees. We know that.
It's not collusion. I mean, to agree not to sue each other isn't collusion.
No, but to agree not to criticize each other?
I don't know. That's an interesting.
I won't criticize you if you don't criticize me. That's a questionable thing, I would say.
I was surprised to learn that you can't agree with another company not to employ. Well, you can't agree with another company not to poach employees. Apple made an agreement with a number of other Silicon Valley companies. Steve Jobs wrote emails saying, "Hey, look, we won't try to get your employees if you would stop headhunting ours," and that in fact is illegal under this.
Well, that because it's a harm for the employees,
right?
I mean, that creates
who's the harm here?
Documentable harm.
Yeah, who gets the harm?
Let's figure
here?
out the harm for.
No, everybody.
Well, you have
lobbyists.
two giant companies.
Lobbyists. It's a harm for
you also
lobbyists.
have two giant companies who hold on to their piece, and for somebody else to come in and compete with them, they can't break through the wall. Whereas if Microsoft's criticizing Google for something, and then I have a company to answer that,
that's a good point.
Then I can join in with Microsoft and on their slipstream.
Professor Jarvis, I will allow your suit. I'm Judge Leo.
Yes, you are.
You know how much Judge Judy makes every single year? She's retired. A lot.
I think I was like,
she's retired because she could. She's retired on her 50-foot yacht, probably. She was making, wait a minute, I want to make sure this is right. It was like, I would. $47 million a year, according to a journal I respect highly called Entertainment Weekly.
How is this related to Google, by the way?
Because I'm Judge Leo.
He Googled that information.
I thought it was interesting. Anyway, the first signs of strain between the two companies, according to Bloomberg, Dina Bass and Nico Grant, appeared more than 2 years ago when Microsoft protested to Google that its Search Ads 360 wasn't keeping up with new features and ad types in Microsoft's search engine Bing. In other words, they were
Microsoft
favoring Google's spots
Microsoft was testifying against Google. Microsoft was doing ads against Google. They created
but remember,
fake trade organizations against Google. They went against Google in Australia. There was no truce. That's BS. There was never a truce.
Well, they weren't lobbying against each other. I guess it was a sort of a truce.
And I thought Microsoft
they
said weren't going to lobby for a while, like recently, like last year.
Yeah.
Or is that not a thing that's happening anymore?
They've been doing it the whole time, especially in Europe, but they've been doing it the whole time.
And of course, Brad Smith, Microsoft President Brad Smith, has been going to Congress saying, why aren't you investigating? Thank you for not investigating us, but why aren't you investigating Google? All right. Anyway, the truce is over. So get ready for the Gmail man to come back. LinkedIn hacked once again. 700 million LinkedIn records are for sale on a hacker forum as of yesterday.
What's in
I'm sorry, June 22nd. Sorry, a week ago. What's in them? That's the thing that's a little scary. Things like imputed salary. I don't know why LinkedIn does that, but there's a lot of information in there. Public and private profile information.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do people have in their private linked?
That's what I'm saying.
Well,
is it things like
a
the
lot of
people who are
had
looking at
their
other people, or?
I remember seeing a lot of phone numbers and just personal contact information being readily available for people.
LinkedIn, by the way, is denying this. Yesterday, they released a statement saying, we want to be clear, this is not a data breach and no private member data was exposed. The data leak was, LinkedIn says, an aggregation of data from a number of websites and companies, as well as the publicly viewable member profile data. Of course, there's been court cases over whether you can scrape LinkedIn.
Whether you can scrape LinkedIn, yeah.
And by the way, LinkedIn has most recently lost that. It is legal to scrape LinkedIn. But they say not technically a breach. So, okay. Anyway.
Right.
Not a breach. You're right. You're posting stuff in public. You can't complain that somebody knows it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get my
Although
that goes back to my argument.
We see the lawsuits
journalists.
around. Oh, go on.
No, I was just saying that goes back to my argument about journalism today. Everything is considered a hack and stuff like that when it's not really a hack. It's just someone actually just left the door open.
Yeah.
And said, walk in.
Yep. How's your blood pressure right now, Jeff? Is it settled down a little bit?
No.
Okay.
No.
Do you want to watch some more tennis for a minute so that...
That'll make me happier, yeah.
I don't want to kill you or anything. 17 researchers across disciplines from biology to philosophy published a paper in the prestigious, according to Recode, prestigious PNAS earlier this month. What is PNAS? Besides a bad acronym?
You have to ask, Leo, and you just don't know.
It is the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences.
Sciences.
Say that? How do you say that? Sinuses?
Yes.
Anyway, according...
A bunch of snot. Go ahead.
According to this... I never realized what a terrible acronym that is. According to these researchers, we should treat the study of technology's large-scale impact on society as a crisis discipline. In other words, a field in which scientists across different fields work quickly to address an urgent societal problem, like global warming or endangered species. Our lack, I think this. I don't find this hard to accept. Our lack of understanding about the collective. No, of course not. It's in PNAS.
And
I don't
Jeff
get
has
PNAS.
not finished either.
I haven't finished, but at least I started.
Collective.
I got to the point. I got to the point where I just said I can't do this right now. My blood pressure is too high.
That's why I asked. The issue is we don't really understand the collective behavioral effects of new technology, and they submit that it might be a danger to democracy and to scientific progress. For instance, they use as an example the coronavirus pandemic and the epidemic or infodemic of misinformation that has hindered widespread acceptance of masks and vaccines. I don't know if that's because of technology or social networks. It might be because of our political environment more.
Which has been exacerbated. The polarization, our political environment has been exacerbated by our social networks.
No, that's true.
I
mean,
I
without
hate to do
Twitter,
this, folks, but you go back, it was a lot worse in the early days of media. It was tons worse.
Wow. The authors warn if left misunderstood and unchecked, we could see unintended consequences. I've been arguing this. I don't think that's... I mean, Jeff, do you throw that...
Controversial.
It's not controversial?
I don't feel like it's controversial unless you're Jeff. And I feel like, Jeff, you've got kind of a knee-jerk reaction that happens to these.
I think we have a show
I do
title.
want to hear your opinion.
See, this is where
and that's the thumbnail
you
right
say,
there.
let's have a discussion, and then this is how you have the discussion.
No, Jeff, let me ask you, in all seriousness, is it your position that that we understand the behavioral impact of technology and social networks, and that there is no
I'm going to answer this.
No, I'm not going to hate you. I'm asking you in all sincerity.
We didn't understand the impact of print. We ended up with a 30 years war and a reformation. Some good, some bad.
Yes,
we figured it out in the long run.
True.
Same thing here. I just wrote a book about just this, right? So, they argue in this paper, to quote from the paper, neither the evolutionary nor the technological changes to our social systems have come about with the express purpose of promoting global sustainability or quality of life. No, Twitter started, and I think still runs, with an effort to improve the quality of life.
And they're not arguing that it should. Okay.
Facebook says, now we can say that they do a really rotten job of it, and that's a perfectly fine argument, but they believe, and I believe they believe when they started, that a connected world is a better world. Google starts with the effort to make the world's information accessible. I return to my argument about the pandemic. I return to my arguments about Black Lives Matter. I return to the arguments about the good that comes. This thing is filled with leaps that require wormholes to get through. Now I'm done.
Okay, so they're not arguing that this is bad. What they're arguing is we don't understand the effects of what they call expanding the scale of a collectively behaving system by 8 orders of magnitude. And they're saying that we need to look at that. And they're calling it a crisis because things are happening faster. They're happening globally. And the impact is affecting far more people at a macro level than the introduction of print, which I like your parallel, actually, because it led to many changes in society, but it led to those changes over a longer time frame, and it affected people. Yeah, Jeff, I mean, we have seen documented changes in how, like, the people we've elected, how we do that, so how we talk about building laws. I would even say how public health is perceived. All of these changes are happening, and they're happening at a level like not everybody knew how to read, right? But now more people have access to this than people had access to print. So it's a much faster distribution of this type of behavior. That's all this paper's arguing. It's not saying it's necessarily bad or good. It's saying we should probably study this, and we should probably study it real fast because
I agree
this is
with
happening.
Studying. I agree with studying fast. I agree with all that. But no, the way this is work, they just said in here that none of these changes were aimed at improving quality of life. That's the kind of prejudice that's in here that starts us off. And I hit that like 5 times and I gave up.
What about this sentence? Political communication research, people like Joan Donovan, in particular, has long described how alterations of network communications technology appear to impact social movements, institutional politics, and political participation. You wouldn't disagree with that, right?
Well, and I would point out that the penny press did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And
no.
And
they don't, by the way, they don't say negatively. They just say alterations. It impacts it. Yeah. A consolidated transdisciplinary approach to understanding and managing human collective behavior will be a monumental challenge, yet it is a necessary one, given that algorithms and companies are already altering our global patterns of behavior for financial reasons.
Media.
You can't deny that. Yeah, but you can't deny that. Their motivations, in other words,
So should we have stopped as newspapers wanted to do to radio. Should we have stopped radio? Because
I don't think they're saying stop it. I think they're saying stop it.
They're presenting it as a danger. This could have been. I'm agreeing with the need. I just said to study, and then I hope we can end the debate Jeff segment. I'm agreeing that we need to study, and we need to study quickly. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We need to invent better systems. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. But again, it's the way that it's presented, and then the way it gets presented in turn in the story is what worries me, because then it feeds into bad legislation like we're seeing in Florida and Sicilene and about 230, and that's my concern. It's always my concern. It's the same thing. I've said it a million times.
I think our bad legislation is
Jarvis. Sorry, go ahead, Miss Stacey.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think our bad legislation is more a function of corruption in terms of having the influence of interested parties that are not necessarily elected or are not necessarily citizens, right? So that's where I would say bad legislation comes from, less bad data, like not as much a lack of understanding about the issues on the ground. Go ahead.
And Jeff, they're just saying they want more. They just want more.
The recode headline. Read the recode headline, would you?
Well, that might be the wrong headline.
Headlines are always.
That's the point. You've got to be aware
that's
of
the problem.
How it's used.
Yeah, actually, in a way,
I saw this. It comes off as a gloom and doom, and I totally lean with Mr. Jarvis on this, where social media has done quite a bit and given a lot of voices to people that didn't really have a voice. Now, granted, on the other side of that coin, there's sometimes I wish some people didn't will just shut their mouths with some of the foolishness that comes out. But it's still nice to know that they do have these different platforms out there that can really help shape change around the world from a societal standpoint.
And wouldn't this kind of study be the first step before legislators kind of weigh in to better understand it?
Again, agree.
Yeah.
Why some biologists and ecologists think social media is a risk to humanity. How much more?
Yeah, but that's Recode.
Risk.
So just say Recode got it wrong, because I don't think that's a proper statement of what this.
Agreed.
is.
I'm just saying.
And I have to say, I'm on the other side of it. While I think this would be very valuable, I think a bunch of social scientists getting together and debating the pros, and I don't think you're going to get anything valuable out of that.
I'd go a different step too. I mean, I couldn't agree more. In fact, I'm going to be convening a bunch of people. I'm working with two people who couldn't disagree with me more, who've written books the opposite of mine, to bring together researchers to ask what are the questions, what do we know, what don't we know, what do we need to know about research. Couldn't agree more. Absolutely couldn't agree more. But the issue that I have here is that the starting point to me is, what do we want to build? And the starting point too often in this discussion, and the way Recode presents it especially, is it's broken. How do we do incremental fixes to the world as it is? That's not imaginative enough. That's not daring enough. That's not demanding enough.
Yeah.
Create the competitor to Google, please. Create the competitor to Facebook, please. Right? That's what I want to train my students to do. That's why I'm working on an effort for an initiative in internet studies to do just that. So I absolutely agree. But if the starting point is constantly that the internet is broken, then that limits the discussion badly.
They're not saying anything about the internet. They're talking about social media here.
Well, and they're not saying even that it's broken, but just we need to understand how it impacts
they're just saying that
what we know and what we think we know and what we believe, and like that. I think that's
it's totally
true.
Fine for them to say, you know what, this is a really big piece of subject matter here that we don't quite understand, and we are seeing a lot of positive things with it, and we're seeing a lot of negative things with it. But to come out and say, hey, we're at risk of this problem and that problem, when you don't really quite have a full grasp on everything that's happening with all of these different platforms, I just don't like how this was.
Didn't Erasmus say we ought to really consider the impacts of this printing press, because it could be good and it could be bad, but we need to understand better what's going to happen to society because of it?
Erasmus said straight out that he feared that there were too many books for mankind. He did jump to the next step.
Yeah, maybe he was okay. So maybe
I haven't read. In all fairness, I have not had the time to read the whole paper first, and maybe it turns around. I think there were lines at the beginning that set it up where I think that it has an impact on the discussion. That's all. But I could be very wrong. I haven't read the whole thing.
No, I think you're right. But I think what those early lines are is to establish the fact that this is something we need to do now. We need to pay attention to, because it's potentially damaging.
But the other reason to pay attention to it is to see what we can build to our benefit.
Yeah, and let's do that.
They address that. They address that in the paper. They note that there are risks and benefits. They even talk about, like, in this regard, social media's influence provides a unique source of both risk and opportunity.
Oh, there you go.
Changes to a few lines of code can impact global behavior processes.
They're talking about recommendation engines and things like that.
Such changes are ongoing.
Well,
with or without
get me to
scientific
click
guidance.
on this story and say why some biologists and ecologists think social media is a risk and a benefit.
I'll tell you the risk. You want to know the risk to society? Link bait headlines. That's the risk to society.
I didn't read this because I see headlines like this pop through my little Google News thing all the time, and I don't even bother because I hate the fear-mongered headlines out there today. It's just I don't get it.
It's a bad trend, and that is also, by the way, driven by financial considerations. And I think you could actually quite reasonably rewrite this entire paper and say link bait headlines in place of social networks, and you'd have exactly the same issues.
Well, except for social networks make it very easy to share these things.
Well, that's true. They amplify these link bait headlines. The reason,
they also make it easy to share Me Too. They also make it easy to share Black Lives Matter. They also make it easier to share the news.
By the way, Bill Cosby was just
they're not
released
arguing
from jail.
that.
The judge overturned his conviction.
I just saw that headline. What the?
It was the terrible prosecutor, and then the judges.
It was actually maybe a justified decision on
I don't
part of the
that
court.
far, but it was
a technical issue.
Yeah, it was a technical issue, but it was a legitimate
it was a technicality.
Issue. They used evidence from a civil suit to prosecute him when they had declined to prosecute initially, and the civil suit followed.
Well, but he said in some kind of public statement he didn't plan to, but there was never a promise made. But it's over. It's too late. It's over. It's done.
Yeah. And you know what? He's 100 years old. I don't think,
He's 83, and he should have to pay for what he did. Think about all the women who came forward, saw this.
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was a predator.
None of this, he's old. I don't care. He
was a predator.
Die in prison.
You thought he should die in prison? Yeah.
And he was made by media, right? He was, and I was part of it. I was a TV critic who liked the show, then didn't like the show, and he hated me for it. But, right. So we elevate people to a level that they too often don't deserve, or we demonize them to a level they may not deserve too in media.
That's true.
It's those extremes. It's what Ant's saying. It's clickbait. That's what clickbait does.
I think Ant wrote this headline here. It's not a pixel book, so sadly, Mr. Jarvis won't buy it.
Maybe. I appreciated the empathy, Ant. I appreciated the empathy.
This is the Android Central review of a brand new Acer Chromebook 514. We've really liked these Acer Chromebooks all around.
Yep.
I know Kevin Toffel loved the Spin. This is a new one, the Chromebook 514.
Pricing on it was too low for Mr. Jarvis last week.
It's too cheap.
When we brought up the Samsung one.
That.
His word,
8 gigs of RAM, Thunderbolt 4 ports.
Rip me off,
11,
please.
11th generation Intel processors. It's less expensive than the Spin. Seems to have some pretty good capabilities. It'll start at $600 on sale in August.
How do you rate the processor and such?
That's a good processor. 11th generation Intel processor. I mean, I don't think Chromebooks really require
run Chrome OS. It should be plenty powerful for that.
It's going to have
that price point would lead him to believe it's.
I would not get the $600 one is the Pentium Gold. I probably wouldn't get that, but a i3 or i5 would be just.
What's the proportion screen?
That's the other thing. I really like the 3x2 screens, but this sure looks like a 16:9.
Yeah, I think it's a 16.
I'd love to have a 3x2.
It's 1920 by 1080. Yeah. So it's a nice HD screen, but do you use your touch screen on your Pixelbook, Jeff? Do you think that's important?
Oh, yeah.
You want the touch?
Yeah, I do. So, it also helps with carpal tunnel.
Yes.
Interesting.
Too much with the trackpad really hurts. And so I can scroll and I can click both hands. It helps a lot.
If we could just get Kevin to give up his master's degree program, maybe we can get him on to recommend a Chromebook.
I'm sure if you asked him, he would give you a Chromebook recommendation.
Oh, okay. We can just email him. Have him find.
But we want to talk to Kevin. It's fun.
Also, He does have a whole site that recommends Chromebooks. So, I feel like you could find that
just
out.
check about Chromebooks.com.
Well, that's where I go there every week religiously, and I read his email newsletter religiously. But he's such a fair man that he kind of says, well, it could be this, could be that. No, I need him to make a decision.
Having worked with Kevin for over a decade, I feel you. I'm like, Kevin,
stop being
or
so
not.
balanced. Yeah.
He's like, it really depends on what you want to use it for.
Mr. Jarvis, I appreciate you bringing up the touch screen in your use case for it, because I just recently reviewed a laptop for hands-on tech a couple weeks ago, and it had the touch screen. And
for Windows, you use Windows, right? Yeah.
Right, and I use Windows. And I never quite got on that train with touch screens on laptops because I don't want my fingers on the screen. I don't want fingerprints on the screen. Now, I get having a stylus to use on a laptop. That makes perfect sense to me for me as a creator, but I just don't see the point in tapping to close windows and tabs and things like that. But with you bringing up carpal tunnel, that light bulb.
But I'm trying to get a window into Ant's mind. If you moved your camera and showed me your desk right now, would it be really neat?
Negative. Not even
that
close.
Surprises me. And yet you're obsessing about fingerprints. I don't get it.
I'm looking at pixels.
Yeah, he's looking at his photos.
Okay, all right. Yeah, you're looking at your photos. That's true.
It's neat relative to mine. So we had the hands-on tech, which will come out right after the show, is Ant and Micah talking about their home setups. Because, of course, with COVID, we sent them home. And we were curious, they both put a lot of work into getting really good quality home setups. They wanted me to do it, but I didn't want to show them my messy desktop. So, but I didn't.
What is your policy going to be, boss man, dictator, on in-office versus homework going forward? What have you learned? What do you
I'm
think
not the dictator in this particular case. Lisa
that's
is.
true.
And we have announced that we're going to ask everybody to come back to work after the 4th of July holiday. So we won't be opening the studio to visitors quite yet. That's going to take a little bit longer. But when people come to work on July 5th, they will be working in the office. And most of our hosts will be working. And although we've told them that they could work at home one day a week if their supervisor allows it.
Right.
And in some cases, people like Ant and Micah and Jason probably will work at home more because as hosts, they do a lot of work at home getting ready to do shows.
I get more done at home, quite frankly. And it's always been that way with me in my professional career.
Yeah. We're of the opinion, though, and I think a lot of bosses are. Apple just said the same thing, that there is a nice synergy that happens when people are all together in the office. And when we have a host office where Ant and Micah and Jason share a space, I don't have to go in there, thank God. But but I think that
the funny thing
pizza
is, though,
smells.
I think that
the thing is we have that host office, sir.
You're only one of the times ever in there, I know.
No. Before pandemic, when all three of us were in there, we were all in headphones.
Yeah, because they didn't want anybody to
We're
hear
busy.
Anybody. Yeah, but I do think that in our business, it's one of the reasons I started TWiT is because I missed the conversation with other people in the business, because I don't think you can hold an opinion by yourself as well as you can if you have it challenged by others. And I think there's so much information that one person can't gather it all. So I think there's a lot to be said for having a corpus of journalists.
Don't get me wrong. I do look forward to Wednesdays and being in there and seeing everybody from sales.
That's just because we have free lunch on Wednesdays.
And food. I was getting to that.
What were you, as a reporter, Stacey, what do you think?
As a reporter, I fundamentally believe reporters should never be at their desk. I mean, unless you're writing, you should never be in the office.
That's different.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you're gathering out there.
Well, so like for GigaOM, I would either be out gathering information or I was virtual, so it didn't matter, but you're home testing devices. You're either like, the only time you're ever sitting at your desk is when you're writing a story.
I come from a culture where if you're testing devices, you do so much better when other people are around and you can bounce off of them and they can give you feedback and input. It's, I think, much more useful to form an opinion as a group than it is as an individual. It's just much more realistic, to be honest. Because no one person
home devices.
Yeah,
I think that may be my issue. I'm like, computers, sure. Light switches?
Yeah, I guess it's possible to have the Aristotelian truth about a light switch, but if you're reviewing computers, you kind of have to get other people's points of view because everybody uses it differently. I mean, it's just anyway. I think it works better. We're going to bring everybody back. I had never left, and John and Burke, our engineers, never left. Some of our editors, because it's easier to work on the computers at work than it is virtually. No, you can't leave, John.
Hey, everybody else got the time away. Now it's my turn, says John.
Yeah. Well, that's what's really happening nationwide is workers are not wanting to come back to work. In fact, a lot of people are not wanting to take a job. They just want to stay in employment.
I don't want to do it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go and teach, obviously. I'm not going to go in nearly as much as I did.
Isn't it funny, though, because when we first started, teaching via Zoom seemed less than ideal, yes?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Especially it depends on the level, but especially for younger kids.
The issue, Leo, wasn't the teaching. The issue for grad school was the cohort.
Right.
Because I don't want to tell any tales out of school, literally. But I think it was that matters. When I started,
that's exactly what I'm saying too, though. It's the cohort. That's exactly what.
But I've also seen it go too far. I've also seen one of the programs we had one year. One of the programs I started, the cohort only saw themselves for a year and a half, and it was too much. They got sick of each other, right? And so we had to mix them up with other students more. There's a fine line here.
Yeah.
And what happens too is that Slack. This goes back to the fine professors writing in PNAS or whatever it's called. I didn't even hear that until I said it out loud myself. Oh,
I know. I know. Now you know what I was talking about.
I'm sorry. I didn't do that on purpose, folks. I didn't get that. Is studying what the impact is. So Slack on a group that doesn't have a cohesion in person, and then there's one troublemaker who can start stuff in Slack. It's interesting what happens then. And so there's some fine mix of enough cohesion and too much cohesion, and the tools have an impact. Yes. I will say again, thank God for Zoom. Without Zoom, many of us would have been unemployed. I wouldn't have been able to teach at all. Made a huge difference. So all the whining about Zoom, I'm not terribly sympathetic to because it saved us in the pandemic. But overdose, absolutely. And Slack, overdose.
Google is no longer requiring publishers to use the AMP format. Remember all the back and forth we did over AMP? I wasn't a fan. We brought your friend who's head of Google News in to defend it.
Richard Gingras. AMP, Accelerated Mobile Pages, was, I thought, on the face of it, a good idea. The idea that pages should load more quickly. They should have less scripting on them. But then the requirement that all the scripts be served by Google seemed to me a bad idea. It wasn't a requirement. It was just the easy way to do it. You could have had your own AMP set up the way you did.
Google knew that everybody just used Google. And so they said, or you could set up your own servers. It's okay. So AMP, and the other thing that Google did was they favored AMP results in their search results. They even had an AMP carousel for a while. I was against it because it kind of undermined web standards, although I understood Google's desire to speed up the web, and certainly
and get rid of the junk on web pages.
There was so much junk.
They were thinking about the consumer to an extent.
Yes, they were.
They were thinking about Google to a bigger extent.
Yeah, that's why I said to an extent.
AMP is no longer required to get in the news carousel, so that's good news. This article, though, from Scott Gilbertson at the Register says it may be that what they've replaced it with is worse. Sites.
And then I never got down to what are they replacing it with. I could
Core Web Vitals.
Do we know what that is?
Well, it's a set of standards. I think it's a set of standards, kind of like AMP, but not as much of a requirement, so that the pages still load quickly. So let me see if I can.
Quality standards, is that it?
Yeah. And
I'm okay with that.
You know, I think everybody understands that the web went kind of crazy with loathing JavaScript and stuff like that. So let me see if I can
Web.dev/vitals has some description of it.
Core Web Vitals report. Fix poor user experiences on your site. This will tell you how your pages perform based on real-world usage data, field data that Google collects anyway in the process of spidering. So it's about load times. It's about other issues. I don't have a problem with this. Google's funny because they know they come across as a little bit arrogant. We know what's best. Yeah. We're going to, for instance, HTTPS. We're going to use our massive clout to make everybody do what's best. And I can't argue that that's wrong, but it does seem a little heavy-handed. For instance, by saying if you use HTTPS, you'll show up better in search results. That's a very powerful carrot, or is it a stick? I don't know.
I was at where
Apple has done the same thing.
Yeah, but Apple doesn't have Apple's nowhere near the clout Google has in its search results. That's massive.
Oh no, they don't. I'm just saying Apple has been pretty known to.
Well, no one would ever call Apple arrogant, would they?
Based on they design things based on what they think you're supposed to want to do. It's just Apple's opinion is that we know best what to have, how to have the user experience be. Microsoft's opinion is whatever you want. We'll just let you do anything you want. Somewhere in between, perhaps. But Google has all this market clout, and I think they're very willing to use it, which I'm not sure I really think is a good idea.
I was proved wrong on this. I was at the Newsgeist in Helsinki like 4 years ago when this was discussed, and AMP was tied to news pages at that event, and we were asking Google for help to get portable content models. There was more to it than just speed. And then Google came back and they said, well, we're working on this AMP thing. This is great for fast pages, And I remember one of the Google people in the room, I'm violating Chatham House rule, but I won't say which one. One of the Google people in the room said, no. If we touch it, then people aren't they're gonna reject it because we touched it. We're too big. And he was right. That's part of what happened here is that there are people like you who said, what's really going on here? I think your point about Google is that they often, what's in their interest is often in our interest, right? And they constantly trumpet that they are in favor of and defend the open web. It is in Google's interest to do that. It is in our interest to have an open web, right? So it's a case where we are, in that case, aligned. Now, advertising isn't an open web, but there's other things that aren't. But that's one area where, in trying to get a better web experience, it seemed that our interests were aligned. The limitations of AMP were often technical, like the URLs remain screwed up to the end.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah.
And so, then suspicion is and it really didn't serve Google to have screwed up URLs, but people were saying, well, they're doing this so they can serve everything. It was a weakness of the architecture. But the presumption in too many quarters is, what's Google really up to here? And the suspicion hurt the effort to make it speedier. Now, Google was going to make AMP, and the system at the beginning was open source, and they did kind of change the governance a little bit, but they never really made it open source. And that, I think, was the big mistake. I think that if people had adapted standards for a fast web and then shamed publishers and advertisers into meeting them, we would have a better web today.
So here's what Google uses. If you, by the way, score high in Core Web Vitals, this will help your Google ranking. So again, Google is using its big stick to get people to go along, and I don't think anybody would disagree. These are important things. They say, by the way, that these metrics will evolve over time. So this is the set for 2020 that they were using. It comes down to three aspects of user experience: loading, interactivity, and visual stability. And the measurements are LCP, which is largest contentful paint. And you want to basically have the majority of content painted up on the screen with under 2.5 seconds. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I think there's a little something wrong with Google saying, and by the way, your search results won't be as good if you don't do this. But I understand they believe they're making this a better web for everybody. And
they have to do something to inspire people to do it, adopt it.
Right. Yeah, but that's not. They're a private company. I don't think that Google should be using its search index as a...
They want to have a good experience. Just as they don't send you to places that have crappy, spammy advertising, they don't want to send you a page that has a horrible
So if a page
experience.
loads in 4 seconds and ranks lower because of it, is it because it's a bad page or because there's a lot of content on it? Or no,
it's because
they
have text.
Well,
it's because it's a bad page.
So everything should just be text.
It's got add things or bad.
No, there's lots of things. It could have images.
Badly done CSS.
First, input delay measures interactivity. This is the second metric. Pages should allow you to give it your input within 100 milliseconds, 1/10 of a second. And if it's slower than 3/10 of a second, it'll rank down. And then finally, cumulative layout shift.
Yes.
Which I do agree with. Visual stability. If let me this is
Crap
complicated.
moving around the screen.
Yeah, you don't want things moving around. So
which also is a dark pattern too, because you end up trying to click to make the box go away. The box moves, so you end up clicking on the ad.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is an example of, well, since there's no regulation about dark patterns, then we're just going to let Google do it.
Well, but here's the thing. Yeah, this was my argument in Helsinki. Was that I would prefer outsiders do it. I would prefer that my own industry had done it, but we never did it. We messed up the web, and there was never a movement in media.
If the W3C did it, then I would not have the same problem.
Why haven't they?
Well, you could always use a different search engine. I mean, you could always say, you know what? I hate that Google penalizes people. I want to see even the slowest, crappiest loading pages. I'm going to go to DuckDuckGo.
Well, unfortunately, DuckDuckGo really is just a Google API, but
I'll use Bing.
I actually have an answer for your question coming up. Last week, I recommended Brave Search. I have another one I want to show people. What's interesting is all of a sudden there is this kind of, for whatever reason, perhaps because of all the FTC and attention and the Congress attention to
because Chrome is like a
Google,
bloated crap.
there are a lot of search alternatives suddenly popping up, and I
was thinking of browser.
I think it's more about privacy, but because they're all privacy focused. But I think it's very interesting. Google has also said it's, and this really should be in the changelog, but given that its relationship to what we're just talking about, Google has also warned people. When you search for something that there is no good answer to yet, it's rapidly evolving. So you'll start seeing warnings on search results like this. Here, let me make this a little bit bigger. If you search for UFO and 106 miles an hour, it looks like these results are changing quickly. If this topic is new, it can sometimes take time for results to be added by reliable sources.
Good. You object to that?
No, the notice isn't saying what you're seeing in search results is right or wrong, but that there may be more information to come. Yeah, well, okay, I have mixed feelings about it. No, I do, because it's an editorial decision. And should Google be editorializing? I guess you could say that they do all the time with their search index.
The world goes after them for saying you're linking to horrible stuff. You're allowing horrible stuff to be linked to. You should clean it up, and then they clean it up, and then they say, "Well, no, but now you're taking too much power." It's a can't win.
Is it editorializing or is it just steady effect? I mean, they have the ability to see this, so are they just saying, "Hey, this is changing"?
Well, that's an interesting question. How do they know?
Find some way to call that some sort of censorship too. You know that's coming down the road.
I mean, you could say, "Hey, okay, if you're going to put this, tell us how you've developed this metric, right? How do you decide if something's changing a lot? What does that entail?" But once they publish that, then people will game it. So this is why, I mean, transparency in search is a real big problem given how much economic value a high search ranking can drive.
It's look, I'm not saying it's easy for Google. By the way, this is a test. It didn't happen when I did the same search on my Google, but so you may not see it, and they're just trying it out. I would like to know more, and of course they'll never tell you, but where do they get this signal? How do they know that it's a changing
They might give you a hint of it, but...
Well, you're speculating. They haven't given us any indication.
Well, if they do give us that indication, then that signal will get gained. I remember talking to them about this in the earlier days of disinformation. I know, but I'm saying that they said.
Oh, I was like, am I on mute again?
We're green. We're green. It's okay. Relax. Blood pressure. We can agree.
No wonder it's 120 degrees in Seattle. They agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hell. Oh no, it's hell freezes over. Not. Okay.
So Daphne Keller, who's a brilliant legal mind at Stanford. This is about the Sicilian bill and 230, but she said that what the bill prohibits in self-dealing potentially says that it opens the door for InfoWars, Breitbart, Daily Stormer et al. To bring must-carry claims against the platforms or demand higher ranking. Because when the platforms make these decisions, which you label editorial, which I would say are for a better experience for the users, then they're going to get accused in even this Democrats' bill of saying they can't discriminate among similarly situated businesses. That's where this goes. Then, if you say, well, we don't clean up the web, but don't clean up the web, this is the vice that they're caught in, and this is the essence of the 230 discussion. I don't want to get into 230 again.
Would Google be better or worse if they just did PageRank? Like, that's it. We're not going to say anything at all. We're just going to do PageRank, which is basically
that's gameable as hell. That was the problem. Ask Matt Cutts. That was the problem. It was gamed. It was gamed like crazy, and they had to come up with other signals. And they have to constantly evolve those signals because the gamers are always ahead of them. The malign influences are always ahead of them. And that was Matt's life. That's what Panda was.
I mean, everything. We're never going to have a perfect world.
No.
Yeah. We're going to have these trade-offs, so we have to say this is going to be the anticipated trade-off. Do we carve out an exception for it, or do we say, well, we'll see what happens? I mean,
when I worked with About.com,
I think you could make PageRank not be gameable.
How?
Well, okay, so how do people game it? They created link farms, right?
Yes.
So
exactly why Panda existed.
All Matt would do is say the quality of the result from a link farm should not be included in the search results.
That was the Panda.
Well, they did that, but then but to do that, you have to say things like, okay, an article has to be X number of words long, and then they'd be like, okay, now.
Right.
I mean, the issue is gaming isn't just like it has to be quality; it has to be scalable and like done by computers. So anything that's done by computers as opposed to human judgment, and also even human judgment. I mean, some people find some things offensive, some people don't. So there is no way to give people there's no way to stop people from gaming systems, and there's no way to give everybody the exact web they want or think they want.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
And I love transparency, but when transparency gets used against you, that's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
See, Stacey, you and I are agreeing a lot today.
I feel like there must be a way to do search results that
I feel like there should
simply search results without any.
Okay, so here's an idea for you. Here's an idea.
I feel like we should have sustainable housing that's cheap.
Well, yes. Google's building that, and Facebook's building some of that, not much. Here's a way you could go in antitrust. In a settlement with antitrust, you could say, because the reason DuckDuckGo is what it is just because it's, as you say, it's off the Google API.
It's privacy forward. That's all.
Yeah, but Google could. But the strength Google has is its scraping. Google could release that as a full API, and anybody could build a search engine on top of that database. You could come to a settlement where they have something like that, and you could let 100 search engines then blossom with all different kinds of structures. That's one way to think about it.
I'd love to see that. I wonder why. Is it because Google is so dominant that?
Well, it used to be that was part of their secret sauce, was that we have the scraping, you don't. Yeah. Now that's less high-end view. What they have instead is their AI analysis of that. So the simple scrapes aren't the special competitive advantage that they were.
I just wish there were a better way. I feel. Do you not feel like Google's results are considerably less good than they were in the early days of Google?
No.
Is that just me?
It depends on what I'm looking for. I think they're actually, overall, I think they're better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Often the search results aren't till at least halfway down the page.
Really? What's so miraculous to me, Leo, is what was I looking up this morning? I was looking up something where I couldn't remember somebody. And I know what it was. I needed to find somebody, and I suddenly couldn't remember the name, and I knew where they appeared often, and that their sexual identity was part of their public identity, and something else. And second one of the search lists, right? It was that, wow, Google, thank you. You found the exact person I needed. Now, I had to guess enough to say that, but I didn't know. Its ability to ferret out your intent is beyond whatever it was before. And again, it's not filter bubbly, because there have been studies that show that your search results and my search results are not that different unless we're each asking for pizza in our neighborhoods. But if you ask for questions in certain ways, it's phenomenal. The other thing, Stacey, you mentioned last week, translation. I've been translating books in Google, biographies of Ottmar Morgenthaler. I have such a fun life, you know? And my German, I've been taking my German lessons with Audible, but it's not good enough for some of the stuff. So I end up, I get a sentence and I say, I'm not sure. Just type it into Google, and it's phenomenal what it does now. Absolutely phenomenal. So the secret sauce is no longer Google has servers everywhere they know every site. The secret sauce is Google, how it analyzes it. If you want that plain vanilla, crappiest site on top, I say they should let somebody have the same argument that is made by some people to Facebook. You should allow people to, if you want to pick just the on an algorithmic feed and see how bad it is, you should be able to do that. And you kind of can. Twitter this week got in trouble because it seemed to take off the cron option. And people were doing stories. Twitter abandoned the cron option. And Kayvon, the product guy, said, no, we got a bug. We're fixing it. Relax.
Yeah, I actually did not put that in the rundown because it was just a bug.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah. People got very upset about it. But
do you use the filtered or the chronological option, Jeff?
I use the filter. I've gone back and forth. I've tried a lot, and I find the filter really. By filter, you mean the algorithmic.
The algorithmic top tweets first.
I find that it shows me things that I'm glad I saw that I otherwise would not have seen.
I
mainly use I use lists a lot, Stacey. So that doesn't get that. My COVID list, my book history wonks list. Hey, a lot of Gutenberg and Morgenthaler in there, and things like that. So that doesn't get that benefit, but I know what I'm getting there, and I curated that. What do you use, Stacey?
I use the chronological, but my Twitter is pretty curated.
I'll bet it is. And what do you use? Cron?
I use the algorithm because I don't have as much time anymore, and it's nice that it seems to be working for me, but most of the time, I'm on a list. I open up Twitter and I go straight to 3 different lists that I have in particular.
May I ask what your lists are? Photo is one of them, I bet.
One is creators. One is my Twitter family. And then there's another one that's called Tech and Gadgets or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Now, we would ask Leo this question, but he's going to say that he doesn't use Twitter.
What's Twitter again?
What's Twitter?
Let's take a little break, and then let's take a little break, and then we'll do the Google changelog, if you would like. Our show today brought to you by AT&T Active Armor. I'll tell you one thing I don't like. Spam calls in the middle of anything I'm doing on my smartphone. We do so much on our smartphones these days, whether it's watching live streaming content. I was watching the F1 race the other day. That was exciting, wasn't it, Ant? Catching up with the family on weekly video calls. I have one every Thursday with the fam. It's fun. Or watching your favorite podcast like this. But no matter what you're doing on your phone, there's no room for fraud calls. Thankfully, AT&T makes customer security a priority, helping block those pesky calls. It's not complicated. AT&T Active Armor, 24/7 proactive network security and fraud call blocking to help stop threats at no extra charge. Did I say that? At no extra charge. Compatible devices, service required. Visit att.com/activearmor for details. att.com/activearmor. google.com/active armor for details. Who's that? Who's the woman who does those AT&T ads? She was on Master of None. I just love her. What's her name?
You mentioned the race, and I laughed.
Was that fun?
I love the way it ended because it reminded me of Deion Sanders playing football. Right before he scores a touchdown, how he dances right before he gets to the goal line.
Never dance before you get to the goal line, I'm telling you.
It seemed like that's what Max Verstappen did just before he crossed the finish line because he was so far ahead. He just slowed down and waved to his team.
Yeah, they do that. Always makes me nuts. There was a TikTok.
But he was ahead by like damn near a minute.
He could do it. He's really been dominant this year. It's very interesting to watch the Dutchman from the Red Bull team do so well.
Yeah.
Lena Waite, right? Every time I do those AT&T commercials, I hear her voice in my head. I go, do it more like Lena. All right, let's play the drums slowly. It's time for
the Google changelog.
Half of what we talked about today could be in the changelog. Here's some more. Google is delaying FLoC till 2023. That's 2 years from now.
Get rid of cookies. Well, not so fast. Don't get rid of cookies.
Yeah, we didn't like FLoC any better.
we missed the cookies.
With regulators, privacy advocates, and major websites condemning FLoC, which was the Google attempt to replace third-party cookies with the federated learning of cohorts, FLoC. The idea was you would be identified as a member of a cohort which should change every week based on your internet usage, and any website could query as you're visiting it which cohort you're in. A lot of people, including the EFF, said we think that actually is even worse. It supports fingerprinting and other things. So Google says, maybe we're looking for a way to make advertising work on the web without privacy invasions. And I guess we'll go back to the drawing board with FLoC. Here is the simple, easy-to-understand diagram of how FLoC works. Got it? Good.
Thank you, Google.
You told us to get rid of cookies. We got rid of cookies.
Well, yeah.
Now you'd like to see what's this cookie jar doing empty? Hey, I want cookies in my cookie jar.
Everybody
took one episode of This Week in Google for us to see how valuable cookies can be to one Mr. Leo Laporte.
I love my cookies. You know what I don't love is the ever-expanding
I love my cookies.
Price. Yeah, you love your waffles,
yes,
your
you
cookies,
do.
your everything. Look at that.
She's got cookies.
What kind is it today?
Those are real chocolate chip cookies. I can tell.
They are chocolate chip with nuts.
I can
walnuts.
tell from 1,000 miles
daughter
away.
Cookies?
Those are daughter cookies, yes.
Oh.
The best part was when I started the show, I said, hey, do you want cookies? And she's like, I could use cookies. I was like, do you want to make cookies? She's like, I can make cookies.
Does she?
So she can hard heads, but they're not making cookies.
She can make cookies. Yeah, you don't want to know what they're putting in those cookies. She can make cookies all on her own, like no parental supervision required. Or did Andrew have to help?
She's almost 15.
Well, no, I'm just impressed.
Mr. Laporte, hard heads.
You allow her, a 14-year-old, to use a mixer?
Have you not seen the cookies and cakes that child bakes? She's been baking on her own since she was 9.
Nice. That is a good thing to train it.
So are those fresh out of the oven, Stacey?
Yeah, they're warm, y'all.
Oh.
Jeff, I know it's actually no longer 1,000,000 degrees. So you want to come out here? Warm cookies await you.
Oh.
Cookie.
Okay.
So when YouTube TV launched, it was $35 a month. It was a great deal. I loved it. You got your local stations. You got DVRs for 6 people. All sorts of things to like. Then it went up to $45 and $55, $65 now a month. No, sorry, 70. Is it? How much is it?
It's
a lot.
To $80, I thought. Sir.
$65 a month. They raised it last year to $65 a month. Now you can add things in addition, but they dropped Fox Sports as regional sports network. Oh. So they've added bundles like HBO, Showtime, and Stars for $30 a month. Well, get ready because the biggest add-on ever is coming for YouTube TV users. 4K. They'll be the first streamer. I think maybe Discovery did it, but the first 4K full-time streamer with Dolby 5.1 audio, and it will be a mere additional $20 a month.
$20 more.
$20 a month.
We're making cable here.
Yeah, basically $85 a month. That's my cable bill.
Yeah.
It'll only be $10 for your first year after a 30-day free trial. Some major sport. Actually, I'm gonna buy it because I have a 4K TV, and I would love to see major sports on NBC, ESPN, and others in 4K. On-demand content from FX, Discovery Networks, Taste Made. They're the ones that do the top-down recipe cooking things. Fubo does 4K. That's the only other live TV streaming service that offers 4K. I don't think the locals, maybe they will. Maybe Google's going to do a deal with the locals. If they were 4K as well, that'd be pretty cool. So get your checkbook out.
Has all of the live sports and stuff too. So
right,
but
not in
think
4K.
It's 4K. No. And doesn't Netflix offer 4K?
It does, but it's not a live service. So this is the difference between.
Okay, that's the difference.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. There are a lot of ways to watch 4K movies and TV shows, but live stuff, that's different. I wonder if they'll include the Olympics which are coming up. That would be worth it. I had, last time was you had to watch it on Xfinity, and it was terrible. It just for me
now
anyway.
they're using those beautiful Sony cameras.
I would love to see 4K Olympics. That would be awesome. Google has made it easier to access advanced search in Gmail. I can't tell you how many times I've explained about advanced search in Gmail. I think a lot of people don't know about it. The old icon was just this little triangle icon. Now it's whatever the hell this is. What is it?
That's the hamburger bar.
Sliders. It's a hamburger bar with. It looks like a vent. I don't know what the hell it is, but they say that's going to make it easier. There you go. That's a Google changelog for you. New icon on search. Google Play developers, you'll need to follow not one, but two new requirements. You're going to need to enable two-step verification, and you're going to have to prove you are who you say you are. This is good. This is to make sure that when you're developing an app for the Google Play Store, that it isn't a malicious app. So it'll be very much tied to your physical address, your verified email address, and phone number.
What does Apple do comparatively?
You have to have a developer account, and I think you have to have a real address, and I think you do have to do something like this. It's also $99, which probably helps to keep the riffraff out. It's a good question.
Yeah, when things
cost money, those chocolate chip cookies aren't free.
So delicious.
The nuts cost extra. What kind of nuts? Walnuts?
Walnuts. Lisa would be so mad at me if I put walnuts in her chocolate chip cookies.
And I think she sprinkled a little bit of cinnamon in there.
Oh, wow.
Or it may have been nutmeg. I think it was either cinnamon or nutmeg.
And you might...
What's the past tense there? They're gone.
You might refer
analyzing now.
Your daughter to the Best Recipes chocolate chip cookie recipe, because they do some very interesting things to deepen and enrichen the flavor, like browning the butter.
She has made brown butter chocolate chip cookies before.
Yeah. She probably got it from Best Recipes.
What did you say Hank was going to make next?
Hank today, Salt Hank on TikTok, made he showed it to me. It looked delicious. I'm just going to have to check. What did Salt Hank make today on TikTok?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's probably already done now.
He puts it, I asked him, does it matter when you put it up? He says it doesn't matter when you put it up, but he, for some reason, puts it up around 9 a.m. Here is Salt Hank's latest recipe. Oh, this was a phyllo dough kind of vegetable tart. So he's chopping up
one of those
zucchini,
the other night.
Yeah, mushrooms, onions, cherry tomatoes.
Good chopper.
He's a good chopper. There's a little puff pastry. He's putting it all on there. A little bit of browned onions, some feta cheese, some crumbles. He's buttering the edges, baking that. There it is. Delish.
Was that butter on the edge or an egg white?
Maybe it was an egg white. I don't know. You'll have to ask him because He says, I made a vegetable tart because my mom's friends keep saying my channel is too unhealthy.
Oh. So what did he make right before?
Steak.
Attaboy.
Fry up that steak, put a little butter, a little rosemary, some garlic.
His friends have a very good
his friends are right. Oh, now we're going to go to the mortar and pestle for a jalapeno garlic and looks like shallots and parsley and peppers.
Hank, he just needs better friends.
I'll just point out that his dad has never said that. None of my friends have said that.
Oh, that was a chimichurri sauce. I got
He
it.
made chimichurri. Very good. With Bang Bang by the Joe Cuba Sextet as his music.
Has Hank come to you to fund opening a restaurant yet? Or
No, but I will the minute he wants one. Yeah, look at that. I told him you should be a celebrity chef.
Thanks, Diane.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Like, he enjoys cooking, or does he just enjoy being on TikTok?
He loves to cook.
Okay.
And he also loves, one of the things he really loves is video editing. So a lot of this for him, the passion in this is he just loves doing he had a crawfish boil last weekend. Yeah. With help from his friends at the Louisiana Crawfish Company, lacrawfish.com. Wow. And, yeah, look at that.
The funniest story I think I've read in a long time was the Wall Street Journal talking to these people doing crawfish broils.
Yeah.
Because they saw it on TikTok. And these quotes from people, and they're just like, I opened the box and they were still moving.
Yes,
or,
they're live.
They're talking about getting their crawfish, and they're like, we didn't realize that they can escape. We stuck them in the bathtub, and soon they were everywhere in our house. I mean, the quotes are just fantastic.
Did someone say bless their heart?
Bless their heart.
I'm sure someone did.
Bless their little heart.
I was
be careful when you go down to New Orleans there, Aunt. You could find crawfish following you on the street.
That's, by the way.
I'm totally fine with it. I know how to rip their heads off.
The LA Crawfish Company is not Los Angeles, but Louisiana. We should be very clear about that. I don't think there's any crawfish in Los Angeles.
I don't know what's
and I wouldn't eat them.
Yeah, I'm like, who?
Agree with that, Aunt. Wise. That and gas station sushi. You just don't.
No.
LA crawfish, gas station sushi. Same thing.
Google has started to use Mum for its vaccine search results. I
think you last said it was going to be like 3 years before they'd use it. So it's
what is Mum? It's the multitask unified model, a new technology by Google to answer complex search queries.
Which goes back to your prior, I just want a simple search engine that just gives me the results.
So Mum is being used to correctly identify over 800 keywords people use to search for vaccines.
This is what matters.
Things like AstraZeneca, CoronaVac, Moderna, Pfizer, Sputnik, all different terms to get, you to where you really want to go, which is where can I get one of these damn things? They have 800 variations of vaccine names in 50 languages. Mum identifies them in a matter of seconds. And after validating Mum's findings, Google applied them to search results so people could find timely, high-quality information about COVID-19 vaccines worldwide. The vaccine is just the beginning for Mum. It's the only confirmed application, but they plan to use Mum in other ways, especially since they've gotten some information about how Mum works from doing this vaccine search results. Multitask unified model. It's AI, right? Right, Stacey? It's a kind of AI of some sort.
Sounds
they talked
like
about it at I.O.
Was that it depends or I don't know? Which one?
It was an I don't know. It sounds like I don't know much about it other than what you just said. So I'm like,
what do the kids call that?
Every time I see that means
the shruggy.
The shruggy. Do the shruggy. It depends.
Well, the shruggy.
Or I don't know. Or
yeah, that's I don't know.
It's just a.
Is this what they use to have you talk to an alien or something?
Oh, was that Mum? No. That was something else.
That wasn't Mum.
The talking to Pluto or the paper airplane.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, that was.
UFOs are too much on this brain.
Yeah, that was AI.
Name. What was that? That was definitely AI.
What was
it? Was this,
well, how did they demonstrate Mum? I'm trying to remember what.
I don't remember that part.
I don't remember Mum.
I must have been high.
Maybe it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't watch all of Google I.O., so it's possible.
Jeff and I did every minute.
Yeah, I had to record shows or something. Yeah. I had a job.
Hey, did you know Google Messages now lets you star messages? Favorite them so you can find important texts? Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And finally, this is actually really good. All right. Everything I've said about Google, I take back. There are many, many people in the United States suffering from insufficient food. And Google is now using Google Search to help them. Feeding America estimates the number of people without reliable access to food is 45 million people in 2020. 15 million of them, a third of them, children. 1 in 7 Americans. So there is a new site called Find Food Support Site. It helps you find a food bank, supplemental nutritional assistance program, food stamps applications, school lunch pickup, and more. They're working with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, No Kid Hungry, and Food Finder. 90,000 places with free food support across all 50 states.
So I tweeted this, and it's now like just automatic. Well, Google's so rich. Well, why don't they feed people? Like, you want them to do everything else now. You want them to feed the world. They're trying to help doing something nice here. Let them. It's a good thing. That's our problem as a society. If we're not taxing things right and taking care of our poor people, that's on all of us.
I usually respond to that with, "What are you doing?
What have you done lately?" Yeah. When was the last time you brought some food down to the food bank? What this really is kind of a specialized search page. And I think that's fantastic. Find food support .withgoogle.com.
Which also goes to your earlier point about this
I don't mind.
So special.
This is separate from search results. This is great. And I think Google
Maybe
Maps
they should do 100
and Google
of these.
Earth. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. And you can even surface those in search results saying, "Oh, you're looking for food support? We have a page just for you." That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I think that my biggest problem is with Google using its huge market clout to push stuff when it should be a priesthood. It should be as kind of neutral as possible.
It's a business.
Well, I know it's a business. That's why the government should take it over.
No. Communist.
And that's the Google changelog.
Let's replace this theme with the International.
It's kind of to the moon, Alice. I think it's become the honeymooners of TWiT, you know. Do you want to see a hilarious hearing as Florida tries to defend its ridiculous social media law in court? A live tweet of the preliminary injunction hearing in Net Choice versus Moody, where their court should hear arguments about whether Florida should be enjoined from enforcing its blatantly unconstitutional social media law. And apparently, Ari Cohn is tweeting this. He's a First Amendment and defamation lawyer, free speech counsel at Tech Friedman. Follow him, ARICOHN, if you want to read this. Is it hilarious? Because I haven't read it.
It is, because I'm trying to see if I can find an example of things
silly.
I liked in it. Yeah, it is, and the judge is just nonplussed again and again. Judge, during the legislative process, people were talking about social media being monopolies. I scratched my head at that. Compare during a mayoral campaign the Miami Herald's control over news about the election over Facebook's control over a mayoral election today. Judge, the Herald had much more control than Facebook has today. I didn't pick this out to go back to the earlier argument because I don't want to, but it's that was so. If you're the Florida lawyer in this case, this is what was begging you again and again and again.
Yeah. It's it's obvious it will get overturned, but
it's been more than
we shall see.
So this is.
Are you listening to my show while you're doing my show? That was my voice.
That was an ad on my page just popped up with
for me.
Oh. Yeah.
Wow.
It's like Anne's busy producing.
Wow.
That never happens on air, though.
Wow. Germany's privacy czar says ministries should just shut down Facebook pages. Shut them down. Any particular pages, or
just that these services just aren't up to their privacy standards? So let's pull down government attempts to talk to the citizens.
Wow. He also said Clubhouse, TikTok, and Instagram have similar shortcomings and recommended government organizations stop using them. Well, that's reasonable.
So go back in your turtle shell, government.
Yeah. We don't need that.
BuzzFeed goes public.
BuzzFeed's going public? It's a SPAC.
Wait, are we still in the changelog? Did I miss the end of the changelog?
No, we ended the change. Yeah, you did. We
it.
played the drums. We did the whole thing.
That's what I said.
I'm sorry. I had like 4 hours of sleep last night, so I'm just like, what is happening?
You know what? Let's get right to the picks. Can
I ask you one quick question?
No. We could talk about that. Was not a sad thing.
It's done. I'm finished. I'm done. I'm out of here. No, actually, I have to go pick up my car. No, I have to go pick up my car.
No, I'm not. I'm
Lisa,
sorry.
I'm gonna. If I don't go in the next 10 minutes, Lisa's gonna go without me, and I will have to walk to the dealership. So that's all we're gonna talk about right now. It's time. Coming up next,
when he has to get out.
Yeah. Well, guess who's in charge here, buddy boy? When
Ant this week.
Well, Ant is actually. Ant's always in charge. No one's gonna say boo to him, but yeah, and John has some clout as well. Coming up, picks of the week. Let's start our picks of the week with Stacey's thing.
Okay, this week's thing is, this isn't really a recommendation.
Chocolate chip cookies. I hope it is.
Well, yeah, those are delicious. No, this is Amazon's. Today, everyone can get access if you're one of like the 8 people who are still wearing their Amazon Halo or are still subscribing to the service. You can now access Amazon's movement.
I have my Halo. I haven't worn it in months.
Okay, so charge it up because this is a really interesting service. It is their movement health service. So what you do is you've got your Halo, you've got your app on your phone, you set the app to record you, and then you do a series of prescribed exercises, like 5 quick exercises, like lunges, bends, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then it's going to say, you know what? It looks like your stretching is not awesome. We're going to try to make you a little more flexible in your legs. Or, you're having a hard time balancing and your left side looks weaker. So it'll tell you these things. And then it prescribes, like, my prescription is like, I think it's about 5 to 7 minutes long of exercises that I'm supposed to do 3 times a week to boost my weak left side.
What do they call? Is this the balance. Movement health thing? What do they call it?
Yes. Yeah. That is what that is.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And then, so I've been trying this for about a week now. And they say like after 2 to 4 weeks, come back and they'll run through the test again, see if you've gotten better. And
this is all from a wristband.
Well, it's a camera and a wristband.
Oh, you have to do this in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, it's not that magical.
This is it's comparable, they say, to a professionally administered functional movement screen.
Yeah. So, I mean, this isn't like this will help you beef up your like biceps. This is to be like, hey, you're getting old and you're having a hard time walking.
I know that already. Thank you. Actually,
just, like for people with Parkinson's
this is
anything
great.
Like that.
Apple announced this as well with the Apple Watch. They're going to do gait analysis. If you look like you are you might be fall prone, they're going to let you know. I think this is really good. Yeah. I have no problem with this.
This is an indication of like trying to take the data from fitness trackers to a more useful level to more people.
All right. I'm going to put my Halo band back on. I guess I've been paying for it because that was automatic, right?
Well, Amazon gave it to people for free for like the first 6 months. And then I know I got it again for another 6 months because I don't think enough people were like really going for it.
It's $4 a month after that lengthy free
Do you ever comb
the cup of coffee? I thought you were paying for it.
I probably am. I mean, I didn't stop it for anything. I just never wear the darn thing. I'll open up the app. It'll tell me. Anyway, very cool. I want to do this. This is a great idea because I am getting old. So
I think we talked about that earlier in the show.
You alluded to it, yes.
Getting.
All right.
Sir.
Knock it off, wise guy. It's time for Jeff Jarvis's number of the week.
Debating.
How about I do my thing of the week and then you can do
that first.
All right.
I'm trying to see it.
I wanted to show you yet another search engine. This from 2 former Googlers, Sridhar Ramaswamy and Vivek Gunathan. They worked at Google in the ad division. They thought they should start a new paid search engine so they didn't have to do any ads. It's called Neeva, N-E-E-V-A. Currently free. It will be $5 a month. It's very easy to install. It has, Jeff, you'll love this, dark mode.
Hey. What's
or
to
not.
Install?
Or not.
You have to install something?
You can have so you can just use it at Neeva.com once you have an account. You could also install a Chrome extension, Firefox extension. You have a variety of extensions. Let me do a search that you guys would know. By the way, it says trackers be gone in the search window. What would be a good search? Should I search for Jeff Jarvis?
Sure.
Pizza.
Yeah, because you'd know. Or pizza would be good. All right. So there you are with the TWiT artwork. Here's a picture of you, American journalist.
I hate that picture. I so despise it.
I know it's hard to get rid of these. I hate
it.
I hate the pictures that Google chooses. This is they do some kind of fun things. For instance, you can get up to 4 months free by doing various little things, including connecting an app, creating your first space, conducting a tour. Yeah. Here's Buzz Machine by Jeff Jarvis. So this is your appearance on Buzz Machine. There's your wiki. So there's a pretty good. Pizza is a good one too. Let's see what they do with pizza. Pizza. Now I did say you can use my location, so they're going to show the location of pizza
Hut
near
and
me.
Domino's are the first things that come up.
And those aren't ads. Those aren't ads.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's just bad.
For some reason, they're giving me the 10 best pizza places in Tampa.
So go to Google now and look and search for pizza. And see what you get.
Okay. I'm sorry. I have to go to google.com. I made Neeva my default search here. I like Neeva so far, but it's very early days. So this is local,
pictures.
Right? Well, yeah, okay.
Nice map.
Not dark mode.
It didn't pull up Pizza Hut.
Actually, there's Pizza Hut. There's Domino's. So, by the way, those are the first search results,
ads.
I should point out.
They're not ads. You're right.
Oh, wait. But did you mention that Neeva costs $5 a month?
I did.
Yes.
Thanks for listening.
Okay. Sorry, I was interested. I was telling my daughter to get me more chocolate chip cookies.
The reason I like that, to be honest, the reason I like that is because that's their business model. It's not.
I was going to say that's really great.
Yeah. I don't know if people do that. You can also, by the way, tell it which news sources you want to see in your start page. So there's some you can, I've thumbed up a few and thumbs down a few. I like that. I don't know. I think this is worth taking a look at. Much as I thought it was interesting to see what Brave is doing. What I'm really interested in is how many startups there are attempting to compete with Google. I think that tells you something, especially since they're all privacy focused, like DuckDuckGo and Neeva and Brave. So anyway, here's another one to take a look at. NEEVA.com. So far, so good.
How long you think they'll be around if you were to look into your crystal ball?
Depends on how
ask that, Ant.
how much runway they have, doesn't it?
So what are the odds it's here in a year?
All right.
I think it probably will be here in a year. Yeah, I think so. I have a 6-month free trial, so I mean, you can connect.
Yeah, so I wonder how much
I've
funding
connected.
they have to afford
These are the apps. I connected Google, Dropbox, and Slack. What's nice is that is now in my search results. So they index my Gmail, my Dropbox files, and my Slack messages because I gave them permission, I might add. And then that will show up in my search results. I kind of think that's nice. You can have different workspaces. So I have a tech news workspace, save for later workspace. You can have more of them. You could choose your news providers. You can see, this is where you turn on and off dark mode, Jeff. Oh, isn't that nice? Much better. Don't you like that?
I feel so much better now.
So much brighter. You could turn on.
Did you run this by Mr. Gibson?
Yeah, I didn't. I don't know what he would do to vet it. It's not open source, so it's not like you could, vet it. It has an incognito mode. I mean, it's a matter of trust that they're doing what they're doing properly. Mostly, the only thing I care, since I've tied Google to it, by the way, I see my calendar over here. The only thing I would like to see is how good the search results are. And so far, I think they're not bad. It was weird to see Domino's and Pizza Hut up top, but it was also the first search results on Google after I got the local search results.
Well, are they also using Google's API?
No. What's the story on this? I forgot now. let me go back to the Fast company. They have a 60-person staff, ex-Googlers. They've secured $77 million in funding from Greylock and Sequoia, so they do have some runway. The main thing is no trackers, no ads, but where are they getting their search from? That's the question. I don't know.
It's fascinating. I just wonder how much money is in the bank right now.
Oh, one other thing you'll like, Jeff. 20% of top-line revenue will be turned over to publishing partners, including Quora and Medium.
I can't stand Quora.
Jeff, you're full of opinions.
Like you're not?
Isn't that like the number one search engine around the planet?
Here's something else you won't like. Scott Galloway is an investor.
Oh.
I think that man's hilarious. I'm sorry. Scott Galloway is hilarious.
I'm very interested. I like seeing this. I'm sure somewhere in here they talk about where the data is coming from, because that's the biggest barrier to entry right now is how do you build an index as good as Google's,
Well, again, that's what I was trying to say earlier. I'm not sure that's the real barrier to entry.
They hired Udi Member, who is a big key search guy, and he left Google because he was frustrated with ad subsidized search. So he was, that's a big acquisition. I don't know. I apologize. I should have figured that out before I got to it. I like a lot of the features. It knows your zip code, but that's all. Anyway, just I'm not saying this is the right thing to do, but it's certainly worth taking a look at. I like the idea of all three of these new, and I love the idea of DuckDuckGo as well. Let's see. Yeah, I'm scanning through the article to see if they talk about it. This is Harry McCracken's story about it, which is, as I would expect from Harry, very thorough, which makes it harder.
Him.
Yeah, it makes it harder for me to find that information. Jeff, now I've given you some time. How about a number?
So Accenture came out with a information-packed report and slides about the state of newspaper revenues. And one headline to me, which I put in the thread that I have there in the list, is that they say that over this period of 2004 to 2018, search had a $51.4 billion growth in revenue. But, says Accenture, 3/4 of that came from new business. Small businesses couldn't afford media before. And the other quarter came from directories and B2B and trade. And they insist, Accenture does, that it didn't come from newspapers and magazines. Meanwhile, of course, newspapers lost an effing fortune over this time, from a high of $60 billion revenue to a present in 2018 of $27 billion. Wow. So a half drop in revenue. Most of that came through classifieds. In 2004, newspapers had 81% of classifieds. Now they have 11% of classifieds. And the total market is about the same, 24 billion. But that doesn't include all kinds of new ways to do classifieds that aren't just having listings, subscriptions for job sites and revenue shares and all kinds of other things that people have done. And but circ revenue is fair. The circulation revenue is fairly standard, though the online revenue is only $0.8 billion. And as we've said on the show before, 2/3 of that goes to three brands in America: Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. So I don't think that's that much. Because if you think, well, okay, circ revenue is holding steady, that's pretty good. Well, they had to double the price of
display advertising revenue. Really,
display advertising
took
revenue
a drop.
Is in the tankaroo.
Yeah,
and even if you look at search revenue, my 10th post, which is from Axios, not from this, is that changes in monthly traffic before and after Trump left office, boring news is yielding a lot less traffic for especially extreme sites, but also mainstream sites.
No, Trump was good for everybody.
Well, that's the conflict of interest, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Well, I've lost my ride, so you might as well take your time now.
Oh, sorry.
I'll be walking over to Ford now. And now at Pruitt.
Don't you have a what was that? What was that thing you used to have? A
bicycle?
No.
A Segway?
Segway. Do you still have your Segway?
Yeah, I do, but it's at home. I could walk home, get on the Segway, then go over to the Ford dealer. Sure, but the Ford dealer's between home and here, so it's actually not that far to walk. So maybe I'll just do that. Ant, you have some things.
All right, I'll try to be brief, fairly.
That's all right. I already missed right.
Oh, now he's going to go to 8 o'clock.
Take your time. We're going on. Anybody want to play some Valheim? I'm up if you are.
You got the time. My first pick is Adobe. I saw an article on their blog, and a photographer decided to ask some pretty, innocuous questions of the photographer community, and they ended up turning them into hashtags, and it's basically a reflection of life. And if you click up the story, it would basically say, wait a minute, now I can't find the story.
I got it. It's on the Creative Cloud. Life reflected.
So if you have, say, inspiration and ask someone to take a photograph of inspiration, what would they come up with? And he accepted these different images and did some post-processing on them. But the post-processing is one thing, but what was more interesting
I find the images
just what
really
people
inspiring.
came up with.
Yeah.
The images are beautiful, and it's a wide range of topics, but I thought this was a pretty cool project from Adobe and the photography community. Excuse me, and that is Life Reflected.
Nice.
And,
really cool.
Second.
That's at creativecloud.adobe.com under the Discover heading.
That's right. And the second one, I remember last year when we talked about trumpeting, the guy, Andy Harris, that did the voiceovers reading Trump's tweets.
I don't remember that, no.
Oh,
I think I blacked out
like
everything with the word Trump in it. Oh, Emperor Palpatine. That's right. I do remember that. Yes.
Well, he has teamed up with Will Ferrell's company, Big Money Players, BMP, and has started a podcast called This Is Americans Lives. And it's basically like a spoof off of NPR's.
Wait a minute. I got to hear this. Which one? Should I start with the first one or?
Start with the one I linked there. It is so
Attachment
funny.
With Gina Grad. So this is his parody of the NPR style. All right. Let's hear it. Let's just hear a little bit.
Hi, guys. I'm Remy Bader.
And I'm Connor Wood.
And we're here to tell you about our new podcast, Talk Show with Remy and Connor. So each week we're bringing on some of the hottest.
This is not a real podcast.
That's an ad.
That's an ad.
Skip ahead. Yeah, skip ahead.
They have ads?
Creators and celebrities to join
All right, well, I can't skip ahead. Can I?
Oh.
Wait a minute. Maybe I can. You shouldn't ever skip ahead in a podcast. You should always listen to all the ads. Here we go.
This is true. I listen to them.
All the ads, folks.
Esteemed sponsors and the all-powerful, all-knowing random sentence generator, which inspires the stories you're about to hear. Yes, whenever you hear this sound.
So they have.
The next sentence you hear is a random sentence provided by our revered, omnipotent random sentence generator. For more This Is Americans Live, listen to more episodes of This Is Americans Live, I guess.
This American
and now,
Life.
your first random sentence.
Yes. Got it.
As the years pass by, we all know owners look more and more like their dogs. Was this just another case of mistaken identity? Or did this dog actually look like its owner?
Sweetheart, really, be honest.
Okay.
Does Gerald look like me?
I mean, you favor each other, but, I would ignore what everybody else is saying. You're not twins. It's not like you're conjoined. You weren't birthed together. You just favor each other.
So we do.
Look, it's very sweet. I mean, you both have
like the thing where they have the random
golden
sentence.
flex hair.
Yeah, that's how they do the whole show. They have a random sentence comes up.
And then that's the prompt for the improv.
The dog was looking like me, and he said, "No, that you do not look like a dog." So I do look like a dog.
You do look like a dog.
Thank you.
Let me ask you guys this: when do you think was the first time that you noticed that maybe your dog was in you as an owner?
Well, when I, whenever
Glass. The iRobot.
The iRobot. This is Americans Live, not This American Life.
Correct.
Yeah, I like it.
This is Americans Live.
They're improv comics, Aristotle Athyris and Andy Harris. That's awesome.
And Andy Harris.
I'm going to have to listen to this. Thank you. Good recommendation.
So yeah, so funny. And lastly, before my studio starts to make me sweat in here, I wanted to give a shout out because this is the end of June and this is Pride Month, and this has been on my brain a little bit. I've been here almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 years next month.
I can't believe that. That's amazing.
And I heard
from come out now. Is this all about coming out?
No.
Right now? Okay, just checking.
This is not that. But I'm just saying, I've been here almost 2 years, and I think about my experiences here and how much I've learned. And 3 years ago, quite frankly, I would have never thought twice about Pride Month. That's just the reality of it. But being here and being further exposed to different things in just day-to-day life, it's really opened my eyes and making me check myself, even down to there are times I'm out in public at the store and I'll say yes ma'am or no ma'am or yes sir, no sir, and sometimes I have to check myself, and I feel bad about that, even down to how I answer some emails that come in from PR and whatnot, and because I don't know how those folks are identifying from a pronoun standpoint, and I have to check myself.
Good
and I
for
have to
you.
tell myself,
that's awesome.
Be respectful of that, and I just want to say to everybody,
we're all learning that. Yeah.
So I just want to show that community some love and to say, you know what, I'm learning and I'm still working in it, and I just want to show my love. That's all.
That's great. Well, we love you, Ant Pruitt. Listen to his latest hands-on photography. Chickenhead in our chat room is saying you're going to love the Lisa Carney photo tips. He said,
I love Miss Lisa. She's great.
They were so good.
And she is raw.
Oh, I can't wait now. And
she is so raw.
I return the compliment. We are so glad to have you, and you've taught us an awful lot about grace, about style, about being a good human being. So thank you for being part of our family. We really, really appreciate it. Ant Pruitt, twit.tv/HOP if you want to watch the latest hands-on photography. They're all there. Thank you to Jeffrey Jarvis. He is the director of the Town Knight Center for Entrepreneurial Journalism at the Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of Blob Operas. And he is also Frank Sinatra Called Him a Bum and a former TV Guide critic. And he's the best.
And Bill Cosby hated me, and that's important today.
Yes. Yes, I think Bill's coming to get you right now. It was the first thing he wanted to do when he got out of prison. So I'm going to get that Jarvis.
That SOB.
Jeff Jarvis.
Thank you, Jeff.
You know the one Sinatra once called a bum. That one.
That one. Yeah. Sinatra was right. And ladies and gentlemen, we always want to make sure that everybody understands that this show is really just a vehicle for Stacey Higginbotham to be herself. We love Stacey. Stacey on IoT.com. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. Listen to the other podcast. We won't mention that. Anyway, great to have you, Stacey. Appreciate it. Stay cool. We do this week.
You listen to the other podcast, but you won't mention that. What was that?
We won't mention that podcast you do with Kevin Toffel, the IoT podcast.
Oh, okay. I was like, are you?
I'm just teasing. Everybody knows that show. It's a great show. A great show. We do this show as such as it is every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2100 UTC. You can watch us do it live at twit.tv/live. If you're watching live or listening live, because there's audio there too, you can chat live. Get all the senses engaged at irc.twit.tv. You can also chat live in our Discord, which is a lot of fun. As you can see, I don't know what that animated GIF is all about, but I'm sure I'll find out when I go back and look at it. This Discord is fun because it is our Club Twit members. You have to pay $7 a month to get in there. You also get ad-free versions of all of our shows. You even get a fabulous Twit Plus stream with stuff that does not normally show up on the airwaves here. things like our Untitled Linux show, which is every Saturday in the Discord. All of that available at twit.tv/clubtwit. And it really is just about giving us a little extra support, which we greatly appreciate. Our YouTube channel and all the other links to various podcast players are at the website, twit.tv/twig. You can download any episode there, listen or watch at your convenience. If you do subscribe in a podcast player, which really is the best way to listen, if they offer reviews, please give us a 5-star review. Let the world know you listen to This Week in Google. Thanks, everybody. It's great to have you. We'll see you next week on Twig. Bye-bye.
You may have heard about this story, but are you familiar with the story behind the story? Well, every week on Tech News Weekly, my co-host Micah Sargent and I, Jason Howell, speak to the people who are making and breaking the biggest tech news of the week. We're talking with journalists, we're talking with industry veterans, often we're talking with the people who are responsible for the story. Don't miss Tech News Weekly at twit.tv.